Title card. Up next, Ames City Council. The Mayor, City Council and the City Manager sit at a curved dais.
Good evening. Good evening. Call the regular meeting for the Ames City Council for May 12th to order. We'll start with a couple of proclamations and then we'll get into the business. So we'll start with the Peace Officers Memorial Day.
The Mayor walks to the podium to read proclamations. Members of the Ames Police Department come to the podium.
Peace Officers Memorial Day. Whereas the police officers of Ames have worked devotedly and selflessly on behalf of the people of this community, regardless of the peril or hazard to themselves. And whereas these officers have safeguarded the rights and freedoms of all in Ames, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of the police officers, and that officers recognize their duty to serve the people of this community by protecting them against violence and disorder, by safeguarding life and property, by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas these men and women, by their patriotic service and their dedicated efforts, have earned the gratitude of the City of Ames, and whereas the service and sacrifice of Ames Police Sergeant Howard Snyder is eternally honored in the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial and the Iowa Peace Officer Memorial. Therefore, I, John Hala, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim May 15th, 2026 as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of the federal, state, and municipal officers who have been killed or disabled in the line of duty. This is done in recognition of the service given by the men and women who, night and day, stand guard in our midst to protect us through enforcement of our laws. Chief, do you want to have say a few things?
Give me a few words. As it would be, we're a little busy and everybody's caught on the street right now, so we don't have as many people up here as we were hoping for, but that's the way it goes. Each May, our nation comes together to honor the courage, sacrifice, and dedication of law enforcement officers. Originally established by presidential proclamation by John F. Kennedy in 1962, National Police Week includes Peace Officers Memorial Day on May 15th, and a week of observances recognizing officers who have given their lives in the line of duty, as well as those who continue to serve and protect our communities with dedication and courage. The police department is celebrating this week with some food, awards, and other activities sprinkled throughout the week. Earlier today, several members of the department received letters of appreciation, commendations, and some unit citation awards. While Police Week is a solemn remembrance of the sacrifices of the brave men and women who serve, it also is a celebration of our officers' integrity, bravery, and service. Tomorrow night, the 38th annual Candlelight Vigil will take place in Washington, D.C., and the names of the fallen will be read and added to the wall. Far too many names will be read tomorrow night. Ames PD has a name on that wall, our own Sergeant Howard James Snyder. He was added in 2012. I pray there is never another. I'm happy to report that no new names were added to the wall here in Iowa this year. I want to personally thank all of our officers for the sacrifices they make and for their service to our community. I also want to thank the Mayor and City Council for recognizing Police Week, and we thank you for your support. Thank you.
The Mayor and members of the Ames Police Department pose for a picture.
All right, now we have Justin Clausen and some of his Public Works.
Members of Ames Public
Staff.
Works Department join the Mayor at the podium.
You only have 3 staff.
That's it. Tonight.
You guys, you get a lot done. National Public Works Week, whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are vital to sustainable and resilient communities supporting public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Ames. And whereas in the public interest for the residents, civic leaders, and citizens and children in the City of Ames to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2026 marks the 66th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, the theme Rooted in Service, Powered by Community highlights public works professionals working to serve their communities every day. Therefore, I, John A. Halen, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby designate the week of May 17th to 23rd, 2026 as National Public Works Week. I urge all residents to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and advancing quality of life for all. My pleasure to introduce Justin Clausen, our Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's my honor tonight to accept this proclamation on behalf of over the 70 public works professionals we have at the City of Ames. Next week, we'll celebrate all of them, as Police Chief Huff also mentioned, celebrating his staff as well. So we look forward to continuing to serve the community, working those late hours when no one sees it and the public is at sleep, and we can continue to make the community better for all. Tonight, I have with me Traffic Engineering Manager Damian Pregitzer and Civil Engineer Mark Ganson as well to help me accept this proclamation. So I thank the Council and the Mayor for your support and all that we do.
The Mayor and members of Ames Public Works pose for a picture. The Mayor returns to the dais.
All right, move on to item number consent agenda. And Council, I'd like to pull item number 10. Is there any other items you wish to have pulled tonight?
I need to pull item number 9, Mayor, conflict of interest.
9,
I'd like to pull item 12.
12. Anything else? All right, entertain a motion to approve consent less items number 9, 10, and 12.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Tim, item number 9.
Yes, so item 9 is the Memorial Day Parade and Program. I chair the Patriotic Council, so it's sort of inappropriate for me to vote on that. But I want to just remind people this is one of my favorite days of the year. It's a day when we're all Americans, and it's a great opportunity for us to celebrate our veterans. The parade is at 10:15, followed by the program at 11 o'clock at the Ames Municipal Cemetery. We'll put up close to 700 flags. It's really stunning, so I encourage people to go out and experience that. So with that, encourage people to come out.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the item?
I'd move a second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 12, Rowan.
We had someone reached out and asked a question about a dam, a concrete ford that goes over the creek at this near this location where we're hoping to put the bridge. And so I was hoping to have Keith kind of just explain to us the discussions that have taken place regarding that so far and kind of where we're at.
Keith Abraham, Parks and Recreation Director, approaches the podium.
So there's a number of different terms for that. Some people call it a ford, some call it a low-head dam, some call it a hydro jump. All basically the main purpose of that is to hold water back. And with it, upstream of that is a gas line that goes under Iowa Creek. So one of the reasons that is there, while it originally was put in by Iowa State, because when they built Vinker Golf Course, they had a path all around the golf course, and they wanted more of kind of a picnic area, public area, and so on. So they included that. We did have conversations, had WPC from the city, Public Works, Mindy involved with it. We talked with Glenn Harmon from the DNR, and then also FP&M from Iowa State. We had conversation because we want to put the bridge is right over the top of that Lowhead Dam. So we had conversation, and the individual from the DNR said, can it be a safety issue? Yes, in certain flows, it can be a safety issue. It also prevents fish from going up and downstream very easily. So with it, we had conversation, and since Iowa State put it in, we said, well, if you want to take it out, you can take it out, but we weren't gonna do it. One of the things that Iowa State also looked at is with Iowa Creek going right through the Venker Golf Course, they have concerns about safety. So they didn't really want to create an area where we have encourage a lot of paddlers coming down the river. So the safety issue is a concern with golf balls and people hitting golf balls over the creek and so on. So at this point, through the conversation, we decided not to take it out. We have had conversations about maybe putting the canoe access in Brookside, somewhere downstream. I know one of the emails talked about maybe doing as part of the easement some type of an access through the easement. As you read it, there is screening, and ISU is very adamant that they don't want people, again, for safety reasons, coming onto the course. So part of the easement is adding screening and so on. So they have no interest in trying to create some type of an access. And plus, there's really no way to get to that access. So the main focus of all of this has always been the trail. Getting connection from Moore Memorial all the way out to Ontario. So that's where we stand right now.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you for that explanation.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
perfect. I just wanted to address that question, before we voted on it. But having heard it, I think, it makes sense why we're not pursuing that at this time. So I'd move approval of item 12.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Under item 10 is we've been served by Emily Boland for 2 years as our ex-officio, and we now have someone who is going to be taking her place. Student government is recommending Trey Anderson, and it's just what an honor it is to have a student serve on council as ex-officio. So I would recommend and ask for approval of the resolution appointing him as ex officio to city council.
Move approval. Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye.
All right, Trey, come on down. You can sit at the dais now.
Trey Anderson, ex officio, approaches and sits at the dais.
You even got your official or your semi-official plaque.
Welcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Not your first meeting. You sat through all of last meeting already to get up to speed. So just give us a quick 1 minute rundown on who you are and what you're studying and why you want to be on council.
Is this okay? Okay.
Always,
Yeah.
it's always on. Watch out.
Okay, I got
It's
you.
always on.
My name is Trey Anderson. I'm from Northwest Iowa, near Sioux City area, and I'm studying political science, international studies at Iowa State. I'm a freshman, and I was interested in joining student government and being the ex officio just to take a leadership position and to represent our students and the interests of our students. And so I'm really excited to start and get into the process.
Very good. Welcome aboard. All right, we'll move on to public forum. This is time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. Council will not take any action on your comments, and we ask you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Is there anyone who wants to address council under public forum tonight? Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself and you may start.
Cameron Gray approaches the podium to address council.
Hello, Council.
Yep.
It's nice to see all your faces again. It's been a while since I've seen all of you, and congratulations on being here. Last time I came, you weren't here. But the thing that I'm trying to bring up
Your
to
name, please, again.
Oh, Cameron, of course.
Cameron,
I'm
yes,
sorry.
thank you.
I keep forgetting. I just assume. But the thing I wanted to bring up, and as most of you know, that I've been a huge part of trying to bring beautiful things to the Ames community, especially dealing with the Black community and really trying to enrich our community with those particular programs and art that I've been partnering with the city on actually bringing to pass. Another thing that just got brought to my attention just recently, or a problem that I've been seeing within our community, is not having substantial transportation for students, especially during nights that they're out and cannot drive home because of how much they've consumed. From the things that I've seen in the aspect of lifts and all the different rideshare services that are offered in our city, always are done around 2 a.m. And so that prevents some students who cannot get home or do not have rides home kind of in that limbo of this aspect of, do I drive home because I can't walk home. I didn't mean to drink too much, or I didn't realize how much I was drinking at this particular time. And the reason why I think it's important for us to possibly think about a solution or thinking about a way of providing some type of service that can make sure that students get home, because I believe that if we do something or provide that system or that service, first off, it would prevent a lot of drunken driving accidents. It would prevent other citizens being bystanders in those situations. And also it would prevent a lot of students having that opportunity of making one mistake and that ruining most of their life because of that one mistake that they made because they had to go home, because they had to go to work, or there are other responsibilities that they had. And I understand that, of course, you're supposed to be thinking about those things ahead of time, but we've all been in situations where we, especially being, 21 to 23, 24 years old, of which we did not understand the actual limits of our bodies at that particular time. So I think it's really imperative for our community to actually show support and preventing these situations from happening, and making sure that especially the student body, because we are a college town, feel supported by the city, and to make sure that they are actually getting home safely, no matter what kind of night they're having. So I think it'd be a really beautiful thing to discuss and possibly implement in our city.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cameron.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Public Works employees Damien Pregitzer, Mark Ganson, and Justin Clausen approach the staff
All
table.
right, we'll close public forum. Moving on to item number 29, 2023 multi-modal roadway improvements. Gentlemen, turn it over to you.
Tonight, we're here to receive direction on the design alternative to be utilized for the project along Stang Road. In February, initial feedback was presented to council regarding two design alternatives. On the screen right now is design alternative A, which has been the leading contender throughout the feedback that we've done. Just to highlight the components of alternative A, it includes utilizing the eastern half of Stang Road in this block to provide one way in each direction travel along Stang. The west side would be converted to a parking loop to facilitate parking for the businesses in the area. And a new shared use path would go in along the western side of the new roadway configuration. A mid-block crossing would go in, and all-way stops would be utilized at both the intersection of Aspen Road and Northridge Parkway. Moving quickly to design alternative B. This keeps the traffic in its current direction right now, but would be reduced down to one lane in each direction. The eastern side would utilize some form of angled parking. The western side would utilize parallel parking, and a two-way cycle track would be utilized against the curb. The feedback that was received at that time, that was initiated through coordination with the association, was strongly in favor of design alternative A. There were some concerns about people being aware that the city was initiating feedback through the association,
So council directed additional feedback to be received. We sent out direct letters to approximately 100 businesses and properties out there and gave them a little over a month feedback window to utilize an online survey tool. The feedback from the second round was very much in alignment with what was heard through the first round of feedback. There is a strong preference to design alternative A. Staff also believes design alternative A can meet the goals of the project better than design alternative B would. It would be a little more in alignment with normal driver, pedestrian, and bicyclist expectations than design alternative B. The direction that we're looking for tonight would be approval of a design alternative. Associated with design alternative A contract amendment would also be necessary to facilitate some of the additional design work that is needed to complete design alternative A. Some of that would be the new shared use path on the west side, the additional driveways that need to be built, some of the roadway reconfigurations as you approach the intersections. And then a part of this that's beyond the image here would be SIRIDE. SIRIDE has been a significant portion of this project. We've considered them throughout the entire length of it. And this project would utilize new inbound and outbound stops in both directions to serve this area. So as we work through the final design of this project, we would remain in coordination with SIRIDE to get those designs in a good location. So,
Since you mentioned side ride, can you identify where side ride stops would be?
yep, pretty much just outside the image shown. There's a few areas that we can utilize east-west pedestrian facilities so they can lead directly into a transit stop. We also can utilize some intersections and some curb extensions that would have minimal impacts to the adjacent parking outside this area. So approximately 150 feet right outside the intersections is where we'd look to get those transit stops.
So on the north and south sides of this area, not in the area itself. Is that
That's correct. Yep.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Questions?
So talk to us about the modeling that you're doing with respect to the traffic impacts. So we have substantial plans for growth to the north. And so could you give us a sense of, as you think about the impacts on the traffic, could you how this would be impacting that?
Yep. Yeah, we're very confident that staying in this section can be reduced down to one lane in each direction. Directly north of Bloomington, it's reduced down to one lane in each direction, and that would be continued all the way up through future developments. So we don't have a significant 4 to 2 to 4 configuration if this project were moved forward with. We also have a parallel route with GW Carver, and the design of GW Carver really facilitates an increase in volumes and being able to handle those issues well along GW Carver. The intersection spacings, the lack of driveways, the lack of on-street parking allows us to handle those additional volumes better than what we can handle them on Stang. So we can make a priority shift on Stang to some more of the multimodal aspects. We also have a very unique project here. A lot of our projects, we try and look out 40, 50 years of impacts. That's not what we're doing here. We have existing infrastructure that we're really trying to maximize and get the rest of its maybe 20, 25-year life to really serve the area well. So within that area, we're very confident that the traffic can be managed with one lane in each direction. We anticipate some traffic moving over GW Carver, but we can handle the traffic here with one lane in each direction.
So when Somerset was laid out, there were traffic studies that were done and modeling that was done. And at that point, there was a recognition that we should have 2 lanes in each direction. So now we've added more housing and plan to add even more. And now we're going to have this go to 1 lane in each direction. So This is where a little bit of trust on our part is necessary, because that seems counterintuitive. And so, and I think as council, we have to have a humility. Sometimes we do something and down the road we have to change. If at some point we needed to go back to a different configuration, we could always walk this back at some point if we needed to, couldn't we?
Well, a couple things I might add. So the original Somerset Village plan, this was one lane in each direction, all the way from 24th Street all the way through the village. I don't believe Taylor Glen was contemplated at that time when
I'm
this.
sure it wasn't.
Exactly. The decision to convert from 2-lane, which was the original village concept, to 4-lane was done before we were even an MPO. So, and it was before, it was my predecessor's predecessor. But I know that back then we did not have the advantages of a DOT, the coordination with the DOT. We didn't have a regional traffic model. Modeling in the last 5 to 10, even 15 years is significantly easier. Like the effort that was back in the mid 90s compared to what it is today is like night and day. So the risk back when this was done, they just felt like, well, we don't know. We can't forecast like we can today. So we kind of reverted to this idea that, well, Stang is a thoroughfare and all thoroughfares are 4 lanes. It didn't really involve a complex modeling effort. It was more of like a rule of thumb that traffic engineers and transportation professionals used back then. We know, obviously now we have detailed modeling, and both Stang and GW Carver will never exceed, I don't believe it's even 8,000 cars. I think GW Carver is somewhere around 5,000 or 6,000 cars in 2050, and Stang might be somewhere around 7,000 ADT. You won't see 4 lanes necessary until you're in the 20,000, 24,000 ADT. But your point about right-of-way, we will always maintain right-of-way. So we're not giving up right-of-way here, even if the infrastructure within it is narrowed to 1 lane. So if there is some reason that beyond 2050, by say 2100 or some other date, way in the future, that we would get to the point where we need 4 lanes, you could convert that. But what we're saying is that would be multiple cycles of a street life that would be way outside this current project or even the next construction of Stang.
Right. That's very thorough. And I appreciate we sort of pressed into you guys to do additional surveying. I'm a little frustrated that only 10 people took the time, but maybe that says something by itself. But we appreciate the effort you made to do that survey. Thanks.
Other questions?
I have a question. We got it in an email, and I know it's been discussed for many years by the businesses in Somerset, but during the construction, what is the possibility of extending electricity to the Crescent for events?
We can certainly coordinate with our partners at Electric
Okay.
to help facilitate that.
Okay.
Would you want a separate motion on that now then to direct you to do it? Or part of the,
I think when you give us direction, that maybe if you would like to include that, you could add that into that.
okay.
We've also gotten several comments about the Ingold parking and whether there's opportunities to reduce that to expand sidewalk cafe opportunities. I don't know if that was part of the consideration.
I think what you'll see in this option A
Mm-hmm.
is right now the shared use path technically runs on that west side.
Right.
So we have natural conflicts. So by removing that and moving it to the middle, you actually will have more room for some of those sidewalk
Okay.
cafes or other options. The other thing I'll say too is, I know we've had discussions around parklets
Mhm.
along Main Street, and I think this is an area that could very well use that as well.
Sure.
So it's possibly another alternative.
Okay.
Other questions? One of the items of feedback that you had was from a person indicating that they had a problem with stormwater and water just cascading into or flowing into their business. And talked to Justin this afternoon, and he assures me that there's been some work done. Could you just talk about that to assure people what's being done to address what currently is an issue?
Yeah, we've already had conversations on that. we were aware of some flooding events in 2025 that highlighted that issue that we have out there. Design Alternative A gives us quite a bit of room to try and remedy that as best as possible. Some of the issue also was the proximity of the roadway to the business and waves that were created from water ponding. This really moves that issue away. So that alone should provide some benefit.
Yeah, and additionally to that, since the flooding that happened in 25, there was an event. I forget the year now, 2017, 2018. I'd worked with the operations staff at that time. We'd increased some intake capacity up there to really handle some of the bigger stuff. Everything drains to this intersection is a challenge. And so when that happens, we have to have time for water to get away. But as Mark had mentioned, by moving the water farther away from that property, we give it time to actually get into the intakes. And we'll look at rebuilding all those intakes in that storm sewer in that area as we go through this project as well.
So is the piping adequate to handle the water, or just needs to be reworked underground or above ground, or?
It's a little bit of both. The intensity of the events are challenging to design for. They far exceed the design capacity of the storm sewer system. So in order to get the storm sewer system to be designed for those, you'd be 3 times the size of what you have now. And it's hard to really justify that for the every 5-10 year event. However, we think there's other things that we can do to help minimize those impacts as much as possible.
Okay. All right, open up public comment. Is anyone who wants to address council on this topic before they make a decision? Kevin?
Kevin Burke approaches the podium to address council.
Thank you. Kevin Burke, I live at 3618 Fletcher Circle, which is in Stonebrook. And as I've addressed before, I own one of the properties at one of those proposed four-way stops. And I did fill out the survey, and I appreciate the council directing the staff to pursue additional feedback. However, with that, I still feel that the survey was flawed in that it only asked for feedback. Do you prefer option A or B? It didn't say neither. That wasn't even an option. So people that took the time to fill it out, most people, they chose the 2 options that were presented to them. Because I firmly believe that there is another alternative to this solution. And I know that this is not a long-term solution. This is relatively a short-term solution to this. I think it is a problem, particularly with pedestrians. But I think also there are other solutions to slow traffic down and to allow pedestrians to cross. Yesterday, I was at the intersection of Aspen and Stang, and I came to a complete stop because a 4-year-old rode his bike out in front of his mom. She had another 4-year-old or 5-year-old with her, and I came to a complete stop, and I had my window open, so I'm stopping people to make sure that they stop to let them cross. It is a problem, and I know it needs to be solved, but I think that if we had crosswalks with flashing lights like we have at the hospital or by the middle school or a number of other places around town where there are buttons that can be pushed to alert traffic that people are trying to cross, is a better solution than a 4-way stop. Because I think traffic is going to continue to roll right through those 4-way stops like they do most other places. I know you need to make a decision on what's best that you feel for the community, but I just wanted to give my 2 cents.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hector Arbuckle approaches the podium to address council.
Hi, Hector Arbuckle, 519 Oliver Circle. And I cannot comment on the 4-way stop. I've always noticed that the Stang area has been, not so nice to walk around just because of all the cars whizzing by. So I'm very happy to see a proposal to calm traffic there. Thank you.
Thanks, Hector. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public input. Any further questions? All right, hearing none. Entertain a motion on one of the alternatives.
I would move alternative 1. Do you want A and B at the same time, or are we splitting them up?
No, it's fine.
Okay, so 1A and B with the additional consideration that Public Works work with electric to see if we can get power to the crescent in the center.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right. Roll call.
B.D. Hanson,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Thank you. Just two quick questions. One is, what's the schedule for this? And two is, will you be following up with, in particular, the business owners that had water issues to describe and help them understand what's being done? 'Cause that was something I think was concerning, in the comments that were submitted. So,
Yep. Yeah, we'll move into final design, which will be this summer and this fall. Part of that final design process will be coordination meetings with the adjacent properties to discuss the stormwater issues as well as the impacts of construction and the phasing and how we mitigate the impacts as best as we can. And then we would anticipate 2027 construction.
very good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, move on. Item number 30, staff report on tree removal, 624 Duff Avenue. Just come after that.
Sorry, I don't know if there's any person to speak today about this.
Oh, there is.
There is not. Okay, so I provided I think a letter to you before. You've tabled this to allow the property owner to be here. I guess she's not here today. So we've explained what happened. We've given some options for you, and we're seeking direction, both in dollar amounts and also timing of repayment, if at all, that you'd like to suggest. So we're open to your guidance in this.
Oh, maybe if you could just spend 1 minute and just give people who are here that aren't aware of it, just a quick snapshot. What
We
transpired.
received a complaint about a condition of a tree along Duff Avenue. There was a condition that the person thought it was an imminent danger of falling over, maybe hitting not only the private property area, but into the street itself. So when we receive a complaint like that, we follow up with inspecting it, and then we call in our forester who looks at it. She looked at it and indicated it was an imminent danger of falling in. Then we have to contact the owner and see if they want to take action themselves to remove it. If they don't, then we will contract with someone to take care of it, remove the situation. It was proved to be very costly. It was a large tree, and they actually had to come in and close down part of Duff Avenue for a time. So it was very costly. The private contractor we called in charged $8,000 for that tree and removal. I think the property owner is indicating that we tried to contact the person. It was an imminent danger. We did try to contact it over a 2-day period, but we did not get in touch with her. I think she claimed if she would have known, she would have been able to go out and have given enough time, she would have been able to negotiate lesser costs than was being charged by the private contractor. So we're just before you there. We said we'd take it to the city council and see how you want to handle it. We certainly can give some time to pay back the amount. You can lessen that amount if you think it's appropriate. Now, we can't verify whether she would be able to receive a lower quote from someone, but that's what she's claiming. So that's what's before you today. And we've given you, I think, a bunch of options, reducing it by 50%, 25%, and letting them pay back the full amount over 10 year, or full amount, and then payment either over a 5-year or 10-year period.
And,
Go
oh,
ahead.
well,
Go ahead.
the Robinsons really wanted to thank council for taking this up and considering it. They, unfortunately, there was a major health event after I had asked that this come forward, and I was thinking that with some delay, they might be able to come, but that's still not possible for them. And so they do very much appreciate this opportunity for this to be considered at a reduced rate. And I know that this council cares deeply about making sure that people have every opportunity to see that the actions of the city don't negatively impact them as much as possible. But they do understand that it is and was a safety issue, but the timing of it just prevented them from being able to act as quickly as they might have liked to.
I agree with everything Anita said. I think it's a very unique situation, and there was a public good here that needs to be reflected. I'm very comfortable with the 4,000 amount, err on the side of generosity, and I would prefer to give the property owner the option of the 5 or the 10 years. My question is more in terms of, do we create some kind of agreement that if the property is sold, like how, is this something that runs with the property or is with the owner? And I wasn't clear on that.
Market handles. I understand.
City Attorney Mark Lambert and Planning and Housing Director Kelly Diekman approached the staff table.
Tim, what would happen would be, I mean, this gets assessed to the property. So, that would be probably at the next meeting we'd bring back, and, I'd work with Corey Goodnow and come up with a schedule. The council has to pass a resolution to assess it to the property. Then it gets assessed to the property, gets billed annually for like 10 years, up to 10 years. And so if the property's sold, that the city would be paid that amount, the amount that's due of this entire special assessment.
Yep. And so this is something that can be negotiated, but oftentimes if there's a special assessment, the seller has an obligation to bring whatever that obligation is current. So I just wanted to be clear how this is going to run with the property. And so I'll take a stab at this. I would move that we go with the $4,000 and authorize staff to negotiate either the 5-year or 10-year to give the property owner that option. It's to her advantage to go with a lower interest rate of 5 years. And so that may be something that's desirable. I'd leave it up to them, but I think either one of those are acceptable.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I'm supportive.
All right, roll call.
Garten.
Aye.
Fetcher.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Petey Hansen.
Aye.
All right, we'll move on. Item number 31, request to amend development agreement to change paving at the Ansley development. Kelly?
So good evening. As you see up on the board is the approved Ansley project. The light gray area in the bottom left-hand corner is the subdivided and area that's under construction now, and the remainder area is yet to begin construction. The developer is asking that the city look at altering a future incentive for this project. Down here where you see this large white area is Cedar Lane. We agreed we would pick that up as a cost to the city as an off-site improvement to Cedar Lane at a future date. Since that time, the developer has seen how we approached incentives for other projects back in December and is asking for us to change our incentive to be able to develop this internal road, which then gives access to developable area. So we estimated a cost for that Cedar Lane approach if the city were to do that project. And the developer has proposed an additional length, which we estimate to be a higher cost component. So if the pink area were to be agreed to as a city project, we estimated around $370,000 versus $250,000 for city funds for the Cedar Lane project. The other issue that you need to consider is the timing of this. The developer has asked that we make a commitment to put this into the CIP for next year, which would mean it'd be a fiscal year 27-28 project. So July 1 of 27 is when we could start doing that work. This year's CIP is already done, and we couldn't alter that if we wanted to. So at this point, it's up to the city council to decide how to proceed. If you're interested in changing which road is to be assisted, and then if there's a dollar amount, we've given you two options, which is the developer request or approximate the value of the other improvement. And then if you give direction to proceed, we'll come back with an amended development agreement as necessary to implement that direction.
Thanks, Kelly. Questions?
Kelly, I'll throw you a softball to start. I want to make sure that what we're doing makes sense from a fiscal perspective and help us think through a cost benefit analysis here. So if we were to do the additional improvements, would that open up the opportunity for additional housing, which we certainly need? And if we could accelerate that, maybe that there's a cost benefit that would weigh in favor of that additional assistance.
We did not do that kind of approach for any of the other projects. So I did not attempt to kind of approach it from that angle and say if there was a cost benefit. You also had the issue that we currently have a tax abatement program for single family. So that's one reason why we didn't really delve into that back in December, is you're already abating taxes for those things. So it really was an element of the review in the past. I can't really offer an analysis to that.
So, and that's fair. Maybe just a follow-up question then. Is it fair to say that this would open up some housing and maybe the developer can speak?
Yeah, so I think the difference, and Mr. Bergeson would be happy to speak to that. The fundamental difference here, and I think his letter brings that out, is if we were to do the pink part, he will develop the green roads, and that opens up at least 50 additional lots for development starting in 27, 28. The Cedar Lane project was going to be in reaction to development that occurs at the south end of the project. So it wasn't directly necessary or required to proceed with the project. It was going to be in response to increased demand for road improvements as development occurred in the future. So it's kind of fundamentally two different things. So one is trying to get development now. One is to improve a condition as a result of development in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Kelly, sorry, I just want to follow up on Tim's question, because we had a discussion earlier that I think maybe also gets at not so much the cost benefit, but the issue of the cost. With the current agreement, we are set to pay $250,000 in today's dollars, but it's at some indeterminate time in the future. And so we don't really know how much that paving will cost.
Correct. Because we just,
Yeah, so the $370,000 in today's dollars for the paving of Aurora would be a near-term investment. So we have a better chance of knowing how much that costs as opposed to what could cost in the future.
The main reason we don't know that future cost is we don't even have a year when it might be done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to put any inflationary factor on that. So the estimates today from Public Works are based on I think this year's, or they keep a running tab of costs. So it's a current estimate based on expenses that we've seen as the city in the last year.
Other questions? All right, we'll open up public comment. Anyone want to address council on this topic tonight? Mr. Bergeson?
Steve Bergeson approaches the podium to address council.
My name's Steve Bergeson, and my wife Ann is sitting next to me, but you'll notice she's not up here. And happy about that.
Zoning location map shown on screen.
Well, thank you, first of all, for just us coming to you and ask if you could take a unanimous decision 3 years ago, which we were so grateful for when you agreed to help us with the Cedar Lane costs, because it was significant. And what happened when we came back from we were out of state and came back and heard about the developer incentive agreements, we realized that part of the motivating factor behind that was to open up lots because of the tax benefit and revenues that could come into the city. And the first phase of Ansley, which is those 30 houses, we're excited about how that's coming, but those are a different type of house. And when we attach Aurora, if we get Aurora fixed to the point that we're suggesting, not only does it open up almost 50 lots, but the type of lots is really important, because we've had numerous inquiries about the townhomes and the cottage court homes, because they're going to be a smaller footprint, and the cost for building those homes is not going to be as much, and we'll have a greater market to tap into being next to the research park. So we believe that by opening up those lots earlier, sooner than later, it's going to benefit us all. And it'll help us respond to the people that are wanting to live in townhomes, wanting to live in like the cottage court footprint could be 12 to 1,600 square feet as opposed to 3,000, in phase one. And the townhomes are going to be between 14 and 1,800 square feet. So it opens up a whole nother market that we think a lot of the people are working in the research park would benefit from. So we're asking to take that agreement from Cedar Lane and take it off the table and to accept the option one. And our commitment would be to do what's in green there and then put in the first, the cul-de-sac there coming off of Aurora would open up the first townhomes that are already designed and ready to go. So.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else?
Thank you.
All right, we'll close public input. Any further questions?
So Kelly, can you remind us of how the funding sources may be different for this project versus the Cedar Lane?
So we would have assumed that Cedar Lane in the future was paid from likely general obligation bonds. Just there, again, no time frame was established, so we didn't have a particular funding source. General obligation bonds are always the default source for something that's a public improvement. I think we did talk about in the report, some of the other incentive projects used other funding that is not available. Like we've committed all of our ARPA funding to other projects. There's not leftovers to put to this project. So we said that the two most likely sources of funding would be to use GO bonds. That's within your authority. And then the other option we described is a developer TIF rebate, but we do have some, we're unclear exactly how TIF works right now because of the budget bill that was passed by the legislature last week. So if you wanted to go that route, which is a cost savings to the city theoretically over directly the GO bonds, we would need more time to work out if that's a feasible funding source or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
So we're always mindful of precedents. And so I'm leaning towards option one, but would you have any counsel for us, Kelly, that by going with option one and creating some more flexibility, that from your perspective, does this seem like sort of an isolated situation or one that could be a basis for future requests?
I think Mr. Bergerson looked at how you approached at least one other project and the idea of what's a first phase and how many lots can you get with that investment. That's why they've proposed this. I feel like after tonight, all of the people that had a chance to participate have definitely had a chance to participate and ask for what they wanted to ask for. I really would be concerned for people to come back in 3 months and go, well, now I think I need this. And when is the limit? So I think tonight's the last one that didn't maybe have the same assessment as the other ones in December, but I would really hesitate to start going back to each one and saying, well, how much more is it now? Because we didn't really evaluate the true cost. We didn't go through pro formas with anybody back then. It was just, we're going to take you at your word. This is necessary for housing to be built in the city. And that's the approach we're taking. And that's my only caution is if we keep coming back to amend things, what's the limit? Because we haven't set a limit for that.
Yeah, that's a fair caution. Thank you.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll move option one.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? The motion carried. Thank you, Kelly.
Okay.
We'll move on to item number 32, staff report on 608 Burnett zoning text amendments and incentive request.
Zoning location map shown on screen.
All right. So tonight you have a request from a developer that's looking to purchase this property right here on our zoning location map. It's currently a parking lot that's rented for use by the U.S. Postal Service, which is just down the block from here. The developer is looking to acquire this soon to build an apartment project. The requests in front of you is multifold in terms of whether it's a combination of zoning issues and financial incentives. So I think, in my opinion, you should look first at the zoning and land use issues to decide, is it a type of project that you want to move forward with their requests in terms of adjustments that are necessary? And then secondly, we should talk about the financial elements. So what I have up on the screen is the zoning. So neighborhood commercial is that purple color. Neighborhood commercial is not used in very many places around the city. This is the highest concentration of it. It's generally a scattering of small residential and commercial buildings that really didn't fit in other places. Here, I'd say that's a little bit different. Here, it was established because it is a scattering of commercial and residential businesses, but it really is that transition block from traditional downtown south of 6th Street to Old Town to the north on 7th Street. So NC is really designed in terms of a lot of different uses, including apartments, including commercial, but the scale is controlled to be as a transition zone between housing and commercial. So within that zone, there's a number of design guidelines trying to, again, manage the quality of design to be complementary and act as a transition. It has no parking reductions of any substance to it. So it's basically parked like any other zoning district in the city, which is a significant contrast to the downtown service center zoning, which is the red area south of 6th Street. So south of 6th Street, where we have downtown zoning, the standards are quite a bit different than NC. They're meant for traditional Main Street type of buildings. It allows for housing on the second floor of a building, commercials on the first floor, and it has a significant parking reduction because of the public parking that exists throughout downtown. So the difference is an apartment in the red area is only required to provide, on a project of the scale we're talking about, 1 space per unit, versus everywhere else in the city, that's a standard zoning district, it's 1 space per bedroom. So there's a substantial difference. So even if you're talking about a 2-bedroom apartment, it's 2 spaces versus 1. And then obviously as you size up, it's substantially different. The developer's not looking to do student suites or anything with 4 and 5-bedroom units. That would be a totally different type of project. He's looking to do 2-bedroom and smaller units. So to do that, he's asking for a change to allow for a parking reduction down to that 1 space per unit. Then in tandem with that, there's a number of other related zoning design issues related to the project. It's essentially proposed, and I'm going to use a picture the developer gave me today. He'll probably want to talk about it a little bit more, but they're essentially proposing a 4-story building. The NC zoning isn't really designed for a 4-story building. So one of the other changes that would need to come out of this to support the project is a consideration of how to adjust the height allowance for a 4-story building. Those are kind of the 2 most key issues here. Is the parking derives the size of the building. The size of the building generates the return for the developer in this case. There's just only so much space here to do things, and they're trying to get a parking reduction to do that. And then to also drive up the number of units, they want clarity that a 4-story building is allowed to add that last level of apartments. The concept I've seen, I think, had 38 apartments in it total. So if you didn't have a 4-story, you're essentially taking 1/3 of those apartments off. So you'd probably go from a 38 to roughly a 25-unit building. And that would jive with another project that I've seen discussed for another location in the zoning district. So that kind of gives you the order of magnitude of what we're talking about. Is if you follow through on this request, you're basically allowing for 10 to 12 more units to be built on that property through a height change as well as a parking reduction. If you only do the height change, I'm not sure it works in terms of how to provide enough parking for 38 apartments. I don't know that fits very easily. So that's a big consideration. And if you just do the parking reduction, that's possible. It'll make it still a little bit more efficient to build the project. It would just have to be built in a smaller envelope, and they would have to approach it a little bit differently. So ground floor units are permissible. So maybe there's some switching of ground level uses from parking to residential units, but there probably still is less units overall if you do not look to pursue the 4-story option for the project. So I'm going to bring that picture up that we have from the developers second here. So I think this is an updated elevation of the building, and I'll let the applicant kind of talk through it. So this is what we're talking about in terms of 4 stories. The floor plans that go with this would show actually a podium for parking all along here. So I don't know that this is completely reflective of the site plan that goes with this. I think the front is reflective, but the side is a little bit different in how I've seen the podium design for the structure. So you can kind of see the approach is a more contemporary design with a flat roof, avoids a pitch roof, trying to do, again, up to the street and be a very urban type of building. So it's trying to walk the line between a downtown building, which I think everybody agree this fits in a downtown setting. Absolutely, that's what it's meant for. And does it fit that idea of a transition then to the north where you have lower scale housing? And part of that discussion for the lower scale housing is there are some older, taller buildings as well. So height is not absent from this area. It's just not common to see it kind of configured in this way in this part of town. So there are some taller buildings about a block or two from here. I think there's basically 2 of those that are older apartment and condo buildings in the city. So for zoning, what I'm looking for tonight is really a direction on if you want to pursue kind of the whole request in terms of changes that are needed. There's a significant number of them, and I'm not even confident that I know like everything that has to be adjusted, because I don't know that we know which approach we want to take. So I'm going to go back to the zoning map, and this is where the land use part is significant here. So if you were to say, why don't we just take red zoning up to here and make it downtown? The issue is you have to have a mixed use commercial building, and you have to meet some other standards that go with downtown. The developer is not trying to do that type of project. So it is an answer. You could say that's what we want to do. You use these rules and follow the project that meets those standards. Again, but the developer is not trying to do a mixed use building. So they have some concerns about what that would mean to the project. So if you stay in the purple, like we said, the height and the parking for sure, and some other smaller issues affect what they can do on the property. But this isn't an isolated property. So we have a ton of these purple properties here for 3 blocks. I would say that eventually we would have revisited this area to see if end-scene zoning would be tweaked one way or another. I think it meets its purpose now. So one of the questions is, if you were to take on this request, do you want to look at it as a study of these 3 square blocks and look at how would you write standards that you intend to use again for other properties in this area? And then you would start to think about, is the 6th Street more of an intensive corridor where you prefer larger buildings? Would 7th Street have some more restrictive requirements because it's across the street from single family homes? You'd probably start to assess like what the redevelopment opportunities really are. What are the sizes of the properties? Could they be combined? What are we looking at? So that's kind of the broader look. It's something like what we just did for the Highland and Sheldon area of the city. You had a request to do a single project there. Staff said the project might make sense, but if it makes sense here, it definitely makes sense on these other blocks. Let's look at it at a larger scale. And you stepped back and said, do it as a larger study. In this case, if you think time is of the essence, or you don't know that you're committed to like an evaluation of the whole area, and we were to figure out a means to address just this site, the most likely outcome then would be, instead of creating a separate zone, would be to change neighborhood commercial. If you change neighborhood commercial, it will apply to other properties. If we go that route, we give you more information about what that could mean on other properties besides just these other properties across the city. But those are really your 2 options, and we need to understand your preference for a longer term study of this area versus we want to go quicker and look at one project and use a process that allows for project review of this site. And it may or may not affect other commercial properties, but we're going to go quickly and try and figure this out for one project and then deal with the other parts later. So that's kind of your big decision. Beyond just, is this the type of project that we want to see here? Is, do you want to think of it in a broader range of properties, or look at it more as a specific site?
So Kelly, I have a question. I mean, personally, I'm interested in option 2 just for the sake of timing and based on the workload of the planning department. But since your department is already going to be looking at sort of a full code examination, would it be worthwhile to explore this area sort of an initial piece, since this has been a goal of council just to target based on the downtown vision and some other things?
I think it really comes down to that timing question. If we were just here without a project, I think you would say study all the purple area,
right?
Come back with one recommendation, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm just gonna quickly modify the code. And I think the outcome is that you're going to put a lot of weight into the special use permit process to review the individual projects rather than make them by right. That's probably the only way to kind of balance speed with input if we're not going to do a lot of input up front.
Sure.
And so I'm not sure I would do a whole lot in terms of assessing this area if we're just going to do the quick one.
No. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I would support option 2. But when we get to the piece where we're looking at the full code as part of your work plan, would it be beneficial to start with this downtown area because we've already identified this through other things that are happening and through the downtown vision to be kind of a priority area? That's my question.
I don't know. I would probably take that input when we come back to discuss the scope. I think my general thought, without us having any real discussion about this, is I was not geographically amending the zoning ordinance.
Sure.
I was approaching it by commercial area, residential, and industrial by topic.
Okay.
Other questions?
So I also am leaning towards option 2, but I don't remember that we've done something quite like this in, there's a phrase that is called spot zoning. And so does this become spot zoning? And if it does, should that be a concern for us?
It won't in either scenario, because either you're going to change it for dozens of properties as a broader area, or what I'm saying in option 2 is you're going to amend the standards for all purple properties. And you may or may not see a project ever come about because of those change in standards, but you're going to take that risk essentially that if the process that facilitates this may be appropriate for another property in that same area. I don't think we're doing anything so outlandish that it couldn't be repeated or wouldn't be desirable to repeat it, but that's just the risk that you haven't really fleshed out what you prefer.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Other questions?
So just let me clarify your clarification. When we talk about just the purple area, we are not talking about NC citywide. We're talking about this strip.
We are talking about NC. So the hardest thing to square for all of this is the parking reduction. There's, again, I didn't come here to discuss all of NC zoning tonight. It's a hodgepodge of properties. Most of them don't have any parking in the first place. It's like what intensification could many of them do? But here, if you're doing a parking reduction, you've now sent a clear signal. Redevelopment's very desirable, and we're going to facilitate that with a parking reduction. And how many units can you put here? How many people would have overflow parking issues? That's just unknown without us moving forward on this.
Okay, thank you. Can you point to where the other tall apartments are on here? I kind of think I know where they are on the map, but
this would be one of them.
That's one, yeah.
And I'm not sure I'm going to pick out the other one right this second. I'll let you study that. I don't know off the top of my head. It's a little hard for me to focus in here and see.
So wherever they are,
churches,
do you know what the parking requirement is for them?
I do not. They're older. So they were built pre-2000. So I'm not 100% sure what we applied as a parking standard to those. I don't even know how many units are in them.
Any other questions?
And Kelly, how far is 608 Burnett from where Old Town starts, the yellow? Do we know?
Half a block.
approximately?
This is the boundary of Old Town right here on 7th Street.
Okay. So is that 400 or more? Or feet?
It would be less than 200 feet north.
Okay.
Like 150 feet north.
Any other questions? All right, you want to talk about before we open up public comment, the other two topics, just so we can get them all on the table. So anyone wants to offer comment, they can offer comment on one or all of them, or any of them.
And just when you get to your discussion and making a motion, I think parking's the most important one. The comfort level of the reduction, and then the second part, is it a study of the area, or is it more specific to this one property within NC zoning. And again, there's a lot of other issues. If they're important to you, I'd be happy to talk about them. I just think those are the two most important.
We'll come back to you in terms of getting asked some questions regarding the, make sure you get the motions specific enough for you. But there's some financial incentives that's being asked for, and also support on workforce housing tax credit. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Correct. So they're really two separate requests in terms of financial incentives for the project. The first one is, in some ways, a more traditional approach from the city. They're asking for a partial property tax abatement. The applicant, however, has proposed a unique schedule that we don't use in Ames that's modeled after something I believe in Des Moines. So that gives us some pause for two reasons. One, it's a more valuable abatement process than what we apply in downtown or campus town or anywhere else that we do tax abatement. So it's a higher value incentive. But secondly, if we were to go that route, we need to spend some time talking with our city attorney's office. There's a provision in state law for these tax abatements that sets out prescribed schedules that you're allowed to use. And then it says you can also create another one. But it seems to say if you create a unique one, then it applies everywhere in the city that you have tax abatement. The caveat to that is if you were in an urban renewal area, which much of Des Moines is in an urban renewal area, unless you do some custom things. So they've also in the bill last week took out the option for urban revite in urban renewal areas to be different. So that's going away as well. So there's two issues with the incentive. We haven't really seen why a substantial incentive is necessary. I think we're all familiar with what we do in campus town and downtown as an incentive to try to support a parking structure or some element of extra cost related to parking. That would be somewhat related here because of the podium that goes into that. But I think the other reservation is if that schedule was to be approved, does it have to apply to other things in the city? And then the second issue is much more minor. The Workforce Housing Tax Credit Program is a state program. There's two elements of the application that the city is involved in. The applicant has to submit a lot of information justifying the project. It's a competitive process at the state level, but there's two things the city has to do. We have to agree that at least $1,000 of value per unit will be provided by the city to the developer for the project. That can come in any means that we want to. It can come from tax abatement, it can come from other funds, other sources, fee waivers, any type of thing. So if it's a 38 unit project, we're talking about $38,000. That unlocks up to $15,000 of state tax credit incentives per unit in the project. So it's fairly substantial in terms of leveraging funding. Our $1,000 can generate at least $15,000 for the developer. There's some other benefits in there as well. So it's a substantial thing separate from our tax abatement. So the one time that we've done this, it was for the Harrison project, and we already had single family tax abatement, so you didn't have to find any other funds. If you were to pursue tax abatement here, that would satisfy that requirement. If you have concerns about the tax abatement, you could support the $38,000 or whatever the workforce housing tax credit is with some other source of funds without having to go into a substantial tax abatement process. The other thing we want to throw out, which I think you're aware of from the report, is the tax abatement incentives, because of this budget bill, they appear to have some substantial financial concerns for the city in the long term that didn't exist before last week. So we're still working through how the bill doesn't, or I should say, how it accounts for growth of new development. It appears at this point, if you give an incentive to someone in the first year the project is completed, that value is never recognized as incremental growth for the city. So on a small project or one time, that's probably not significant. But if you keep repeating that over and over in the city, you're losing the ability to increase your tax base to match the services that are then expected with growth. Mm-hmm. So there is some concern here. It's not the fault of the developer. They put this in before the budget bill was proposed, but it's something that we all have to grapple with, is exactly how a tax abatement is going to make sense. And that's the same issue with TIF. So whether it's tax abatement or TIF, it's the same concern that we have to work through here as the city, along with everybody else in Iowa.
You mentioned that there was a custom rebate request. Can you review what is currently in place or what's being utilized
The-
right now?
There's three that we typically have in the city. There's more options than that, but right now we use a 3-year 100% abatement. That's in the state law. We also use what's called the 10-year sliding scale, which is also in state law. It starts at 80 and essentially goes down 10% every year towards, and then down to 20 at the end. And then we do have a custom one in the city that's called a 5-year sliding scale, which is what we use for single family tax abatement. It's starts at 100 and gets to 0 in 5 years. It's our own invention as the city as a way to kind of do a midterm. Most people don't pick that. It's either usually the 3-year 100 or the 10-year based on your time horizon as an investor. The 5-year just generally isn't more valuable to people, so they kind of look at it short or long term under the current ones.
Thank you. Any questions on these last two items from Kelly?
Kelly, is the downtown abatement schedule applying to all the red properties on here, or is it a different boundary?
I'm not 100% sure it's completely the same. I think it's pretty close though.
All right, any other questions? All right, open public input. Is there, I presume people interested in addressing council, so if you want to address.
Can we have the developer speak first? Because
Sure,
he wants to explain the project, I think.
Luke Jensen approaches the podium to address council.
Good evening. My name is Luke Jensen. I am representing this City Light Apartments. It's a very, very exciting downtown housing opportunity that we have tonight to discuss. I've been looking forward to the opportunity to share this in more detail with you guys as we look to do something that I think has been a longstanding goal for this council, for this community, is to bring housing downtown. Can you imagine looking out that window in a year or two to have people that live there enjoy the services and the experiences that we get to have downtown? I grew up in Ames. It's been a desire of mine also to see meaningful investment in our downtown community. I see that as the fabric of a strong community. I had a chance to hear about the farmers market and its expansion just a few weeks ago and this summer, and heard from my brother that just a unique opportunity for people to come together, to connect, to rebuild some relationships and things that downtown offers that's unique in our community. So I think having residents full time in our downtown will help further that. This building that's outlined here is what we see in a lot of other peer communities. This is a quintessential urban infill project. It has a lot of the modern elements, but also being complementary to some of the historical details that exist downtown. Kelly did a great job of outlining the zoning modifications. I think we would agree that there's so much of this that we get it right and learn as we go back into the NC zoning. What an opportunity to have a live project to say, hey, this worked really well. Next time, let's not do that. There's opportunity to do that with a live example that we've got here tonight. If you guys recall the downtown visioning guide, it speaks to this site. That was how I learned about this. It was called out as a 3 to 4 story infill opportunity. And throughout the visioning guide, there identifies several other strategic properties. I'm pretty confident that if we can get one to go and one to be successful, we'll see more happen. We need one to go. Additionally, the support for the workforce housing tax credit is a substantial and meaningful ask. I think that piece is so critical for the success of this project. Been very fortunate to work with a great team led by Dylan, who has a lot of experience in working through that program. All the indications that we've gotten seem to say that this meets so much of that, the goal of that program. We also just want to address the tax abatement topic. The proposed schedule that I put out there is of higher value than the traditional 10-year sliding scale. And I think it's because it is a higher risk project. These haven't been done before. And I want to go into this project feeling the tailwinds of the community and the support of the council and the different partners, and say, hey, they've stepped forward as a council. They believe in this project and seeing the housing happen. They're supporting the workforce application. And that to me speaks volumes of stepping forward and saying, we believe in what you're doing and trying to do there. Parking, height, flat roof, all of that Kelly outlined accurately. I think with a can-do attitude, we can get this done. That's my ask tonight, is let's make it happen.
Thank you, Luke.
Any questions?
All right, very good. Thank you. Dave? Sandy can come next after Dave.
Location map and building rendering shown on screen. Dave Carter approaches the podium to address council.
Dave Carter, 709 Douglas. We've lived, my wife and I, family lived 30 years, about a block and a half in Old Town away from this property. Very supportive of increasing residential density downtown. Important to keep that increase in infill redevelopment in the downtown commercial area. Just a couple other points in response or in return for financial incentives, then, and as well as any infill redevelopment, it's perfectly appropriate to have design guidelines and standards. We need to establish those here so that it fits in with the Old Town single family residential, which is just half a block away, and of course the Main Street. And those don't have to be onerous, but I think it's important to establish those. If you look at this as an initial pilot example for other projects going forward, I think it's important to have those. On the zoning side, the one other thing I see that's a big hurdle, in the neighborhood commercial, the maximum floor area ratio is 0.7. So the neighborhood commercial, like Kelly described, really has been applied for small retail areas, scattered areas, really is more of a almost a mini strip mall type regulation. And we also need to change that. It would only allow 1 or 2 stories here of this 4-story building. And then the final point I want to make, there is a good example in the 300 block of 7th Street. I think it's 300, maybe 200, called the Goldfinch Apartments. They were built about 1990, not under this zoning. And they were built, the builder was the owner and the 4th floor occupant for a long time. So he had an incentive to really excel in the design and the standards. But that's a good example as far as design of an appropriate building. It has a pitched roof. It exceeds the proposed height of this building, I believe. But I'd encourage you to take a look at that. And then Kelly made the point, and we're really behind the 8 ball on our zoning. If we make changes to the NC zone, that that would apply citywide. And so we need to come up with some unique solution here that would enable a project like this. But I think overall, 30 years ago, we identified increased housing as a need to improve the downtown area. And it's good that we're having another example.
Thanks, Dave. Sam?
Sam Stagg approaches the podium to address council.
Good evening, members of the council, Mr. Bear. My name is Sam Stagg, and I'm here representing Ames Main Street. And I believe there was a letter drafted by Ames Main Street you all received in support of this document, in support of this project. And so I'm here just offering that visual support and audible support for the project, emphasizing those items stated in that letter. But I appreciate the mentioning of the Downtown Ames guiding vision that this council approved unanimously a year ago, and how this project really is in support of that. One piece of specific information I'd like to offer while creating and participating in that effort to create the guiding vision was that peer cities of Ames, about the same size with the university in it, about 5% of the permanent residents live in the downtown area. If you multiply that times about 30,000 people, there should be about 1,500 people living in the downtown zone or area. We may have 200 to 300, and that might be being generous. And so I think any effort to increase the residential opportunities for downtown in that perspective is a great opportunity. So I think the opportunity, as Luke mentioned, to really move the guiding vision forward to increase housing is a great opportunity we have before us today. So I just wanted to offer that little piece of information. One last thing, there are a handful of things that make downtowns great. Government services, we have that. Entertainment and bars, restaurants, we have that. Businesses and retailers, we have that. Services and service providers, nonprofits, we have that. The one thing that we're missing or that we're drastically short on is residential. And so many people so many places would kill for 3 grocery stores and government services and the public transportation that we have and the retailing options that we have downtown. We just don't have the residential. So another log on the fire for support for this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Dylan?
Dylan Klein approaches the podium to address council.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Dylan Klein with the Ames Alliance at 304 Main Street. A lot of the comments that I had thought of coming here have already been stated, but I just want to highlight the how excited we were at the prospect that Luke brought this project as a direct result of the downtown guiding vision. I think that was a lot of years of work in preparation. As Sam mentioned a little over a year ago, Council accepted that plan. There's been significant work going on, some behind and some in front of the scenes and so the public will be seeing some activity from that plan. But really, this is the first development project that is coming out of that. And I agree with Luke that it has a great potential to be catalytic for development. If this project is successful, it's an attractive project by the renderings. It's serving a specific purpose with the designation of bedrooms of folks that may not have 1 car per bedroom. They're living in the downtown because they want walkability, which was a key goal of the downtown guiding vision. So I hope that you are as excited as I am about this project. I know that the incentive request has been clouded a little bit by some of the discussion or some of the changes in the legislature. I think moving forward, Council, I recognize will need to make strategic decisions on offsetting or doing a cost-benefit analysis of whether a project is worth the expense of the tax assessment. I would pose that this project is worth that risk. It's on the scale of the city, it's not a large number. And I think that the catalytic nature and the increase in residential capacity in downtown is worth that investment. Also, I want to mention the workforce housing tax credit. This is a fantastic project for that, with infill in the downtown. It aligns with a vision that the city has put together. And so I really hope that you will support the resolution of support for the city. Also, there is a letter that an official from the city, probably Kelly, will need to draft in stating that the zoning is correct. So all of this has an element of timing. The applications are due on June 10th, which is coming right up. So you have one more council meeting for regularly scheduled council meeting to do that. So I really hope that we can push that forward and put forward a strong application for the City of Ames. Thank you.
Anybody else? Hector?
Hector Arbuckle approaches the podium to address council.
Hello, Hector Arbuckle again from 519 Oliver Circle. And I just wanted to second a lot of the comments, but in particular, I wanted to talk about the importance of the parking minimum reduction. So there's actually been a lot of cities across the country that have been reducing or in many cases eliminating parking minimums. Part of that is because parking minimums and creating parking spaces costs quite a bit of money in a lot of cases. And that's kind of forcing a trade-off there. Residents who may or may not have cars or are deciding whether or not they want to have them. Well, if the parking is forced to be as part of their rent, then they may, it kind of takes away their choice in that matter. It's also, as the City of Ames in our climate action plan is trying to go more towards multimodal transportation, make it more friendly, having housing options that are located, that may not have as much parking, but that are located in a place where residents can do a lot of things without a car, can help provide residents more options that allow them that multimodal lifestyle, especially as this one's right next to all sorts of shopping options, including a grocery store and sidewalk that can take to lots of the employment destinations of Ames. So I just wanted to say my support for reducing or eliminating parking minimums as part of this zoning change. Thank you.
Thanks, Hector. Kate?
Kate Gregory approaches the podium to address council.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kate Gregory. I live at 803 Kellogg Avenue, and I just have a couple of quick things to say. I agree with everything everyone has said already, but I want to emphasize some points. First, I think this project is really important because not only does it provide infill, which the city has needed, but that block that was colored purple on the map, that's a key block, I think, in stabilizing the Old Town community. I've talked to you before about my concerns about the Old Town community, and I think having these kinds of projects will really help stabilize that residential nature, but also help the city move forward with some of its goals. I'd also say that I think Ms. Corrieri's comments about trying to come up with standards or expectations that can feed into those other three blocks, it's important. I know that you've got other demands on the work plan time, all that, but I think just doing this project without thinking hard about how those standards will apply in the future to the rest of that block, we'll really be missing an opportunity to do great things for the city. And I think this apartment building alone would be a real tragedy if the rest of the block didn't follow through with that. So if you can somehow thread that needle, I think that would be great. I think that Mr. Carter's comments about the fact that this building is between historic Old Town and historic Main Street are important. Not only did the Goldfinch do a great job when it was built to try to blend in the community, but Fairway, built very recently, put a lot of effort into the appearance of that building. And we've talked to Mr. Jensen, and he understands our concerns, but the more that the city can require that changes in that block reflect the historic nature of that part of the city, doesn't have to duplicate history, but is reflective of that, I think would be really useful. And then lastly, I'd just like to thank Mr. Jensen and also Mr. Klein for doing outreach to our Old Town neighborhood and coming to us, not waiting for us to ask them, but coming to us and saying, what do you think? We'd like your input. That means a lot. It builds a lot of trust and was really greatly appreciated by our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, close public comment. Kelly, there's a talk about, I don't know that I was aware, maybe it was in the report, that June 10th is a deadline for workforce housing tax credits, and there's some definitive direction or assertions has to be made, and that's only one council meeting away. So can you comment on that in terms of comfort level? Can that be accomplished?
Well, we can only do so much. It'll be up to the applicant to convince the state whatever you agree to is enough for the project to proceed. So there's no way to make any of the changes that are requested by June 10th. This is not possible. So developer will have to sell their project based on direction of council to go and do things that'll help facilitate it. In terms of the financial ask, you don't have to say where the money's coming from or how it's happening. You would just have a statement that says the City of Ames will provide an incentive of at least $1,000 per unit. That's my understanding. You don't have to say how that's happening. So that's pretty simple to get that accomplished if that's your direction.
Okay. Are there any other questions before we get into, I'd like to make these motions into 3 specific categories. One has to do with the zoning. Nope, sorry. You can talk to Kelly afterwards, but we close public comment. Zoning and one other thing, parking. And secondly would be the workforce housing tax credit support. And third is if there's interest in financial incentives and what that might look like. So any questions that council has of staff before we?
So zoning is first.
Yeah, and I would say let's start with parking first.
Oh.
So I think that, so it's probably the most significant issue. If they have to find 20 more parking spaces, they don't exist on this property. The scale has to come down to match parking if there's no changes. I think the issue is, right now, I'm not 100% sure what we're doing for zoning changes. So how to reduce that parking for this project and not overcommit to other projects is something I can't really say how that's going to happen. So if you do this reduction process, start this reduction process, it may apply to more properties. We just don't know how that's going to work out right now.
But we could, so to say, just hypothetically, if we were to move to change parking minimums in NC zoning to be 1 parking spot per unit, that would be sufficient.
That would make this project work. We'd probably cap it at the 2 bedrooms. So in the past where we've
Okay.
done different parking
Oh, sure.
strategies in other parts of town.
For 2-bedroom
It's
units.
really focused on the smaller units so that we're not encouraging
4
campus
bedroom,
town
okay.
style housing.
Well, I would move that we begin the change of parking standards in NC zoning to only require 1 spot per unit for units that are 2 bedrooms or less.
Second.
Okay. So can you remind us, or council, where all is NC zoning exist?
Oh, I just looked it up.
Okay.
West Street. You got the Thumbs buildings. We got the campus garage building on Lincoln Way. We've got this chunk here. We've got the Reliable Street Lockwood Cafe up there. There's the Ace Hardware is on NC zoning. The Habitat for Humanity shop is on NC zoned land.
You can start to see how
So
some of those places
there
have
aren't
much
many.
different context than this.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the other thing I would say is I think we would follow the model of what we just did on Highland and Sheldon. It is only if we do a parking reduction, it's only for new construction.
Right.
Because we don't want to encourage the remodeling of non-conforming apartment structures and just start to cobble together things. That's how we approach the Highland Highland Sheldon area.
Yes, on new construction.
Yeah, so
So-
thank you for identifying where those are. And that was the point of the question, was that this isn't just one small area, making sure council's aware that this is could have broad reaching implications around the.
Yeah, so I think whatever direction you give tonight, I think you're giving me license to tailor it to the situation, but I'm going to be adjusting a lot of language in the code to try to make this work and still have it be reasonable in other parts of the city. So I think we're all working from that understanding, because I'm not getting direction on every part of the code that needs to be changed, right? Okay, so parking, that's clear to
And
me.
everyone, council understands this is for all of the way the motion states, it's all NC. And then Kelly, you mentioned something about limited just to new construction or new.
Yeah, so again, there's probably a lot of little details I'm going to add to stuff that will work for the project that we're going to probably put in here to help manage it.
So the intent of the motion is not to be that specific blanket wise. It's more or less a given.
I mean, this one's clear, right? It's
Yeah, this
for a parking reduction for apartments that are 2 bedrooms or less.
Right.
Whether they exist or not right now.
That wasn't the motion. I'm telling you what I'll propose. Did you change the motion to include that?
For new construction.
For new construction only, I did.
Yeah,
Yes.
Perfect.
Totally.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right. Everyone understand the motion? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. What else you need for zoning?
So I think then the next question is, I think the next motion is a whole bundle of issues. The essence of it is 4-story buildings. The FAR would restrict it as well. But if you're saying prepare amendments to allow for a 4-story apartment building within the NC zoning, I will address every issue that relates to a tall building in terms of intensity and height.
And design.
So we have some design requirements right now. I think, well, let's come back to that question. First, let's talk about height and intensity. If you're willing to consider changes for a 4-story building, let's get a motion on that.
Is there a motion?
I would move that we allow 4 stories in NC zoning.
Second.
Is that adequate? Anything else you need?
Yeah, so again, we'll make a lot of changes to make that possible.
Okay.
So I think the design guideline one is I'm sorry, if you're going to vote on that first.
Yep. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Carried. Go ahead.
So I think the issue is we have a lot of design guidelines existing in neighborhood commercial. I don't know that they need to change or not, because we haven't really gone through it. So I think the motion that you're looking for is to evaluate the design guidelines that exist in NC zoning and how they would work within, and I'll just say in air quotes, an urban housing development project, because they weren't written for that, but they might work for that. And if not, we'll have to consider adjustments. They were written for a different type of thing. So like the fairway across the street was built consistent with the design guidelines that exist, but that's a commercial, 1-story commercial building.
Can you think of an example of something that would not, like in the proposed design, that would not fit?
There's language about a pitched roof that may or may not be mandatory. And if you don't do it, there's some other trade-offs. I don't think it fits completely within those. And I'm not saying that this project isn't desirable or could be approved. I just don't know that it meets the guidelines because they weren't written for this type of thing.
Yeah, I'm just a little leery of getting into a
For the most part,
very
the design
nitpicky
guidelines
discussion
were,
about.
yeah, for the most part, they were written for commercial buildings,
Right.
but they do apply to all types of buildings. That's what gives me some pause. They don't apply to single family. They don't apply to 2-family. But then once you leave those lower level housing types, the guidelines do apply. So I think you need to have some discretion for me to look at that and then suggest if some changes are necessary.
And what about, and just remind me, the timing of what we're asking you to do when it comes to these design guidelines, does that have to happen in order for this project to move, or can you do that?
For the workforce housing credit letter?
Yeah, in order to, I mean, then
We can't do it.
we
by then
can't
anyway.
enact it, but I mean, I guess well, no, I was just thinking about the timing of how it all works and how much, planning already has on their plan? I mean, I know we want to have these standards, but like, could we do that?
So the edits that I would make to NC zoning related design guidelines are not going to be so significant to
Okay.
elongate the process.
Okay.
Like we have to go in and change a whole bunch of stuff in NC.
No. Yeah.
Again, if you want to pursue this project, that's just the bundle of changes that have to be all be considered at one time.
The letter of support really shouldn't be dependent upon
No.
design guidelines.
No, true.
Yeah.
The state's not going to worry
Yeah.
about design
No,
guidelines.
yeah.
It's going to be can an apartment project be built on this property?
Right.
I follow.
But your zoning might not be complete, right?
It will. There's no way it will be completed.
So do you have a suggestion?
I'll work with the applicant on that. It's not a council issue. They want the planning director to explain the zoning for the property, and we'll explain it in as it is and what's been directed by council.
So
Do you have a suggestion on a general motion that would be giving you some direction?
I think since we're not confident in what would be changed, if anything, I would say direct staff to evaluate the design guidelines that are currently existing in NC zoning and propose changes that might be needed to allow for a 4-story, again, urban type of apartment project.
I'll move that.
second.
Carly, did you get that?
She was busy.
Who seconded? I'm sorry.
Me.
Thank you. Okay, I'm good.
You got it?
Yes.
You're a fast typer. All right. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Anything else regarding any parking or zoning?
So do we actually have to make a motion on option 2 to explore changes to the zoning standards, or have we already covered all
So I just
that?
want to clarify that everybody's on the same page. So all the motions so far are to change NC zoning.
Right.
And that I assumed was in the spirit of option 2, not option 1. But if
Correct.
you wanted it option 1, it's
Let's
all
go
those
ahead and-
motions are
let's clean
still
it up if
relevant.
You want to go ahead and do that? Yeah.
So I'm just going to move option 2 to explore changes to zoning intended to address the Burnett site only.
Consistent with what's already been talked about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second.
All right. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. All right. Workforce housing tax credit support.
I
We
would,
just
Are we-
need a
I would
motion
move
for
that
supporting.
I would move that we proceed with a letter of support from the city for workforce housing tax credit application.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Financial incentives.
I'll save the best for last. Why don't
Well, it's one that I think that probably warrants some discussion.
So just for the sake of discussion, if we were to research what the developer is proposing in terms of an alternate schedule, what's that timing? What that process look like?
I mean, I need to sit down with Mark or one of his attorneys and just make sure that we're on the same page from either general attorney opinions or case law, how that's been interpreted.
So Kelly, speak to us about the importance of consistency. We're working with lots of developers, and obviously we want to have consistency. How do we strike that and work with the proposal from Mr. Jensen?
I mean, I think you're right. Our ethic in the past has been to be very consistent on the type of abatement that we propose for similarly situated projects. So again, the reason we even have the 10-year abatements in downtown and campus town is, especially in campus town, is because of the cost of parking structures and the goal for intensification. So the idea of an incentive to do a transition urban project near downtown seems to kind of fit the general idea of that. The monetary component, how much is given as incentive is really the question, I think, rather than should any incentive be applied. You just have this cloud of the state budget bill just kind of overhanging it that a week ago I don't think we would even be talking about something like that.
And so I'm still trying to wrap my brain. So that's a separate issue, and I agree it's incredibly important. But help us understand the delta between the 10-year abatement and what Mr. Jensen is proposing.
It's substantial. It is substantial. I did the calculation today, but I didn't. It is substantial. Like, I'll hazard at least 30% more valuable over that time frame.
So
I think generally a 10-year sliding scale has, one way to look at it is you've abated roughly 45% of the taxes paid over a 10-year period. In this proposal, you're abating 75% of the taxes to be paid in that time period. So there's quite a delta between 45 and 75.
So
But we're only abating city taxes.
No, you're abating all taxes except for residential. So you abate the county's share, the city's share.
So when we're considering this, we're really considering this not just for Mr. Jensen, we're considering this for really all developers because everyone else is going to want.
That's a unique.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So,
So I just want to make sure we're sort of framing it that this is broader than this proposal.
Right.
yeah, oddly it is. It gets put on the city. Yeah.
That, you know,
I mean, we can set criteria, right? So,
Right.
so we, if it meets the same criteria, like density, number of units per, I mean, it would have to meet certain, criteria that meets our our desire to.
So again, the urban revi, I believe I'm going to be able to just put it on this property because it's 2 lots. I think I'm safe there and I don't have to involve other properties, which is good. So in my mind, the criteria maybe are a little less important here than other places because I think you're ultimately seeing this all as one package and either you like it or you don't. It's not an area where projects are going to come in over a 10-year period. You got to be careful how it's done. It's really going to be tailored to this site.
But can you just clarify? I thought I heard that if a new custom tax abatement were put forth for something in a URA, that regardless of the criteria, others could go ahead and apply for that because that has been granted previously. Is that right?
That's, I believe that might be true. That's why I have to tell you that might be true because the language in the code seems to say generically that if you make this extra option, which you can do, it must be applied to all. I don't remember the language. But essentially, it says all urban revi areas.
And that doesn't say it has to, but you can't constrict it by criteria. It's basically it's a broad base.
So
Basically,
the law doesn't even address really eligibility criteria except for in a very minimal way. We've had some very elaborate criteria in the past. No one's ever challenged that. So the law doesn't get into the detail of how to apply criteria very well.
So do we have to, as part of this, determine if we are willing to
Well,
consider?
I think the developer is looking to understand if you're interested in some element of incentive beyond the workforce housing tax credit. Again, you can't approve anything tonight. All you can do is set in motion a process. If it's,
Quicksand.
I think the other, I don't know, it's probably not exactly what the developer wants. I think you could motion that staff provide more information about the cost differences. Maybe we have more information about the legal issues. That's possible. I just don't have that tonight. I don't know. I can't also guarantee when I'll know all of those things either.
So as far as if staff were to get clarification to the best of staff's ability in this odd, uncertain, new climate that we're operating in, am I right in thinking that the 2 things that we would be looking at, especially, are does a custom abatement apply for all URAs if we offer it in this case? And the second one is, and maybe you know the answer to this already, if we grant the 75% abatement, because we discovered it doesn't apply everywhere all the time, are we assuming that we are never able to recapture more than 25% of the improved value for that site?
That's what we think the law says.
That's what we think the law says, but that would be
You will
another
not
thing we
know
get
that.
clarification.
You will not get any clarifications and you won't know that till next year when you submit a budget. And the state says you did it right or wrong. Unless some interim guidance comes out that we don't know.
That's correct. What you just
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how we need to operate.
We would think that's true.
Kelly, I'd like to dive a little deeper into Mr. Jensen's suggestion that there is a higher level of risk here that warrants a greater level of contribution in city incentive. And so I've been approaching this that we treat all developers sort of equal footing. But I'm having trouble seeing that there is a difference, but can you help us see from your perspective, is there, or maybe the council can help me see why with this project, it's first, and I appreciate that. So maybe there's value in that, but is there additional risk that we can sort of wrap our brain around? That's what I'm struggling with.
I mean, I really can't. I've seen no financial information about the project. I don't know projected return, cost of construct. I just don't know any of that to give you any sense of what's a reasonable expectation of developer, whether they're the first mover or someone that's later in the cycle. I really can't answer that.
Okay.
What process does staff normally go through when they talk about doing a TIF or tax abatement in terms of drafting agreements? Is there any kind of review of pro formas? Are there other
Sometimes.
things that show
So
justification?
we do it two different ways. One, so campus town, we don't review pro formas. We said it's the policy of the city to support certain types of projects. Here's our no questions asked incentive for you. And then in other cases, we have asked for information about construction, projected costs, return on investment, and then understand how much the return on investment is changed by whether it's a TIF or whether it's a tax abatement. So we've done it both ways.
So for tonight, would it suffice, given the fact that we're almost we're actually at an hour already in this item, to say whether or not council would be or wouldn't be interested in some form of, either tax abatement for the project, but that the amount is not known at this particular time, pending other information and other deliberation?
I mean, I think that's fair because you just don't really have a ton of information and at the same time, a lot of unknowns. So to me, a statement of intent to support subject to a lot of more information and review, I doesn't seem unreasonable with what we know tonight.
But at the very least, what we currently have available is available.
Except it requires ground floor retail for the downtown.
If you were to move downtown north, again, I don't think you want to do that. I think we're going to make a custom one for this property because I believe if I can't meet state law the way I think I can, then I might come back and say we need to adjust something else, or we'll have to bring in another property to meet state law. I think I can do it with how it's platted right now, though.
Okay.
There's a silly wrinkle in the state law that an area means 2 or more properties. So you could have 100 acres on one property, and that's not an area. You have to have 2 properties. It's a weird. It's just the way it is.
Okay.
But if we were to apply a URA to these 2 parcels, you think that we're within the...
I believe we are because they are 2 legally platted lots, even though on that map it's shown as 1 parcel. So I'll let my city attorney tell me I'm right or wrong, but I believe that is compliant with state law.
So if we are able to establish a URA, we can make available the abatement schedules that are
You can use any of the standard schedules allowed by law, which is the 10-year, the 3-year. There's also the first $75,000 of a residential improvement option. Like there's a host of those, and then if a custom one didn't have some other ripple effects, you would want to consider that. You could do the 5-year, but that's not one that they're going to pick. The other issue I think is we might want to look at a custom one that addresses our issue of first year value.
Yeah.
I think that's that's not what has been said, but I think that's the biggest issue to staff is if you do a custom schedule, we would want to look at preserving first year value as much as possible for the city because that's going to be in our greatest interest.
All right. Is there a motion?
I would move that we ask staff to investigate the issues surrounding the creation of, what are we calling these things?
Incentives.
An urban revitalization area is the mechanism to get to property tax
so
abatement.
the creation of a URA with a unique schedule of abatements.
Well,
Is that-
wait.
You don't want to say that because you might want to use the same one.
No, I think we understand that, though. We don't understand the implications of what
You're-
Luke is asking, right?
Correct.
Why don't you repeat the motion? I think I know where you're going with this. Go ahead, repeat again.
I have that it was moved that we ask staff to investigate the issues surrounding the creation of an urban revitalization area with a unique schedule of abatement.
Yes,
How about
very, very.
an alternative schedule?
Okay, an alternative schedule of abatements.
So this is basically an information. Is there a second?
Second.
So this is basically an information to get more information, understand what the implications might be. That's what it is. It's not saying you are or aren't going to do.
That's the limit of that particular motion.
Right.
Everyone understand that motion?
I do. Timing, and I want to support this, but do you have any sense, Kelly, from the schedule of development, is a delay in this while we?
I'm not prioritizing this. So this doesn't have to come first.
Well, it has to come soon if they're going to run.
Yes.
If they're going to.
Well,
But
Get a
we could
project.
also move that we support the notion of creating a URA with abatement.
Certainly.
So I'm not saying we have to do the investigation before we express our interest or our
Okay.
disinterest.
I misunderstood. That's good. That's helpful.
Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And is there any motion regarding what you just,
Workforce, do we have to do?
the workforce is taken care
So
of?
then you want a separate motion to say we have an interest in pursuing a URA for
Right.
this location,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
I think so.
Okay, that's my
So
motion.
essentially, you would
Second.
combine, if that motion passes, you're going to get
Right.
alternatives
Gotcha.
with the URA proposal.
Okay.
All right. Was there a second? I didn't missed it.
I did.
Bronwyn did. Okay. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I wanted to address a few bits of feedback that we did get about this proposal.
Can I want to have one more question.
Oh,
on this,
sure.
And then I don't want to separate this.
Yeah.
So just so we're leaving with clarity for the developer tonight, it is what we did we communicate support for a 10-year abatement? And are we leaving?
By her motion of the URA, basically implicit in that is that if it is done, then there are already state law that allows you to have different types of abatement, but it's not at the 75%, but it may be at a lesser amount. That's yet to be determined. The amount.
Right. So, but at least we communicated, that's what my understanding in
Yes.
support of this,
Yes.
that we're saying we're going to support some level of incentive.
Correct.
That was my understanding of the motions.
And then on top of that, Gloria said, we'd like to know more about the alternative proposal.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. I really like the way this was done tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Right.
clarification.
We haven't done it yet, have we?
No, but one is trying to get some indication.
Do we
Bronwyn,
vote
go
on
ahead.
your motion?
I just wanted to mention we got some feedback. I mean, we heard plenty tonight that was supportive of the project. We did hear some feedback too from folks who were concerned about the impact on parking, both for the post office, which is in that area, and the neighborhood. And I want to communicate that we're not insensitive to those requests too. Like I get it. I get why that parking is important to the post office, but ultimately at least I feel, and I think I speak for council too, that it is a goal of ours to increase the population of our downtown, and infill housing is very important from a sustainability perspective in a number of ways, right? And so that, that overrides the request to maintain that property as a parking lot. But it's not that we don't understand. I mean, I drive through that neighborhood every day. Or bike through that neighborhood every day, one of the two. And I see people parking, I see the staff from the post office coming to park on the street, right? Because their parking lots are utilized fully, right? So I know that the neighbors too will feel a little impact from that. Anyway, just wanted to say we're sensitive to it, but it takes time to adjust to changes like this, and infill is important. So thank you.
All right. Anything else you need for tonight, Kelly?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Let's take a 5-minute.
Did we vote on that?
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot.
I can assure you, if we hadn't, Carly would say you haven't voted on this yet.
Carly, we
Keep us on track.
I didn't remember
All right,
voting on the second motion.
Okay, we will
take a 5-minute break and then reconvene.
Title card, Recess Ames City Council. Corey Millies, Fleet and Facilities Director and Animal Service Consultant team are at the staff table.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started on item number 33, Ames Animal Services Update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here tonight to talk about Ames Animal Services, and that's one of the first things you'll notice.
Corey, can you make sure you put your mic close to your mouth, please? Thanks.
No problem. So we have with this kind of as we move forward, we won't talk about Ames Animal Control or Ames Animal Shelter. It'll all be Ames Animal Services from now on.
Presentation of Ames Animal Service Kettner on screen.
Kind of see why in the report. We're joined by our consultant on this project, Envision. We have Brett Van Zee and Sean Davies here. Sean will go through a presentation, but I just want to touch some brief highlights where we're at. So we finished design development and we're starting construction document phase. We thought it'd be a good time to check in with council. After we did design development, we worked with Stecker Harmson here in Ames to do an estimate. We were over. We did some value engineering. We looked at FF&E pricing to make sure, and we looked at some alternates, which Sean will touch on. We were able to come in under our budget, but I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our fundraising team and all of our donors by raising $4.5 million. I know some of them are here tonight, so I hope people in the community thank them for all their hard work, because without them, we don't have a project as successful as this. So as you can see, we're under budget. There was kind of a requested change from staff, donors, volunteers to add some better access to the dog yards and the dogs. So everything we show tonight kind of assumes that will take place. If you accept the report at the end, that's what we'll move forward with. As we stated, we showed the estimated cost, and donors and the fundraising team have shown they can cover that additional design and construction costs. So now I'll turn it over to Sean so you can kind of see the slides of the building.
All right. Thank you very much.
Please use a microphone.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. So today we're just going to kind of give a general design update on the Ames Animal Services project, located in 2715 Dayton Avenue over on the east side of Ames. Next slide. So just a brief, we're going to do a design update, look at the floor plan, give you a general layout of the building, and then we're going to look at exterior material palettes, concepts, and then we're going to go down and look into renderings of the exterior. Then we'll go into the building, look at the interior material palettes, some concepts as well, and then interior renderings. After that, we're going to touch on schedule, and then we'll touch on budget as well. Corey will talk about budget. So the floor plan here, so you can kind of see the left end of the building is an addition. It's about a little less than 2,000 square foot addition. And then the rest of the building is existing, and we are remodeling the entire building. The exterior cladding of the building is brick. That's remaining in place with a few areas that we are modifying. So top middle part of the building, that is the new entry. That's kind of the entry lobby, reception desk. And then really the building is split into the left side and the right side. The left side is kind of dog adoption areas and intake spaces. So dog spaces are green. On the right side are cat adoption spaces. Those are kind of that reddish salmon-y color. And then the associated intake spaces are light blue. On the south end of the building, that yellow area is a treatment area with 2 treatment tables and then a surgery room with 2 surgery tables as well. And then we have next to that, we have a disinfection room and then a laundry room as well. The middle kind of green area is an office suite, open office area, a couple of office spaces, a conference room. And then there is a multi-purpose room that also acts as a break room for employees. That can also be utilized as overflow kind of animal space as well. That room will be treated floor and walls the same way the animal spaces are as well. Off to the west end of the addition are exterior dog runs, so kind of fenced in areas for dogs to be able to run around in, get exercise and play and whatnot. So before we look at the renderings, I just want to touch on kind of exterior materiality. So the existing building, it was an old, it was the Eagle's Nest daycare facility. It's a pre-engineered metal building with brick cladding. It's kind of a purplish or purplish reddish brick. So to kind of dress it up a little bit, kind of give it a more contemporary look, we're proposing to stain the brick, kind of a dark charcoal gray color, and then also pair that with some dark gray metal panel. And then we're going to kind of contrast that in some strategic locations with a wood look metal panel and kind of a lattice or trellis louver system. Then we are looking also at building signage and then some playful graphics as well on the building, which you will see. Also want to touch on some design concepts. These are some precedent imagery from other projects we're drawing inspiration from. So this building is on Dayton. It's 55 miles per hour. It's a small little building. So we were trying to think of how we can give this building some street presence. So there's this whole concept of the billboard, which is kind of a large, graphical element that we can put in the building in some strategic locations. Then kind of on the middle right, we have some playful graphics on the building that kind of identify the function of the building, and then some building signage, identifying entry and things like that. Then on the right side, if you've ever been to Valley Junction in Des Moines, there's a place called Coffee Cats, and it's a coffee place. And they have a nice little bay window in the front. So the whole idea of animals on display, whether you're approaching the entry of the building or driving by, was kind of a concept we incorporated into the design. So next. So this is just kind of an existing axon view of the northeast corner of the building. So the entrance will be on the north side. You can kind of see a little bit of Dayton Avenue on the left there, and the parking lot to the north. So this is existing, and then next. This is proposed. So what we're showing is that kind of dark gray stain, putting kind of a billboard on the entry area with kind of an entrance portal through at that kind of entry extension in the middle of the building. We do have 4 bay windows that branch off of the meet and greet, the kind of cat adoption areas, and also one in a dog adoption area where you can kind of see those cats and dogs playing as you approach the building. And then to the right side, you will see the addition, which is a little bit taller. It's kind of a gray box, but we do have some mechanical screening at the top, and proposing some graphic on there as well. So go to the next slide. This actually talks about kind of the human scale. We're proposing the billboard element, but more of a human scale, the dark stained brick, bay windows, and the playful graphic elements, as I mentioned. So next slide is just rotating around to the northwest corner. If we go one more slide, really the rooftop mechanical, so all the new mechanical equipment for the building will be on top of the addition. It's 7 RTUs and 3 DOAS units. And they will be screened, completely screened per Ames guidelines. There are so the addition is mainly dog adoption areas and intake. We will have windows into each one of those spaces, so for natural light for those dogs. And then there's that dark metal panel on the addition to kind of complement the dark stained brick. And then all the exterior dog runs off the west end of the building will have artificial turf for cleanability and maintenance reasons. So, and then I do want to touch, so if we go back one more. So there are a couple alternates here. You kind of look at the south of that image, there's like some new parking drawn in there, and that is 12 additional parking spaces that's in addition to the 25 existing parking spaces on the site. And those additional parking spaces, additional 12 spaces, will be an add alternate. There also is an add alternate for some pre-manufactured shade structures in the dog run areas. So both in the large dog runs and then also in the small, there's a few smaller dog kind of fenced in areas as well.
So just to clarify that, so that was a question I was going to ask. So there will be some coverage there. This doesn't show that, but there would be some.
That will be an add alternate. So the base bid, there will be none, but there will be an add alternate in the, we will have that in as an add alternate if the project comes in under budget.
Maybe explain what you mean by add alternate for those who may not know what you mean.
So an add alternate is, so there'll be a base bid for the project, An ad alternate is not necessarily included in the base bid, but if the project comes under budget, a contractor can bid on, they can provide a price for one of those alternate items. And if the project comes under budget and we can afford an ad alternate, then the city can accept an alternate.
So I don't want to micromanage this, but I think that's an important feature, and I would want this to be either part of the base bid or it's something that we could add on later. But my stars, it gets hot in the summer, and just seems like it would be ideal to have some kind of coverage for those dog runs. I have one.
Yep. We've definitely talked about the need for shade structures when we were going through the exercise of keeping as many components in this project as possible. That did fall a little bit lower. Still something that is likely needed, want to have, but maybe not necessarily need to have. So we can look at that in our concept and see if there's a way that we can incorporate that in some way. At this point, we want to include that, but we have pulled that back slightly as that fell down the list a little bit in priorities.
Okay.
Yeah, you've identified the price, and so let's say it comes in at budget, and if someone can raise more money or council wants to put a little more money into it, you have the idea of what it could be, but I think that you can prioritize at that point in time. I think it's a wise way to try and go about it.
So we try to think about these things like if it would affect the design of the project. This is something that could be added afterwards, right?
Yes, it could. We would
That was a very slow yes.
I never want to just say yes and then get caught on that. Structures like this would likely require some footings and foundations, which we were going to be putting turf down. So we'd want to think about maybe what we do as part of the base bid so that a structure could come in and be placed there without any impact to the expensive turf surface that's being put down. That's my delay. They need to think through what we do there.
All right, that's fair. I'd rather have you be deliberative. Okay, thanks.
Well, that's a good point, Tim. You could put in the base bid the footings and foundations for a straight shade structure. Then that's there, and if you have to add it later on, you got at least the footings and foundations in place to put it in place.
Yeah, I'm really reluctant to micromanage from the dais, but this seems like an important feature.
Yep.
And maybe if Ron wants to speak to it, but just in terms of the functionality, we're going to build this amazing structure and not have coverage for the dog runs.
I think that the point's well taken. You can
Absolutely.
You and staff can talk about it.
Absolutely. We will being this is a design review, we will bring that into our overall documents, and we can speak to that at our next council meeting. But at a minimum, we will be prepped for additional shade structure at a minimum, with the hopeful goal that we have good bids and it can be part of the base bid project.
Great, thank you.
Okay, go to the next slide. So this is rotating around to the southeast corner of the building. You can see Dayton on the right there. North is kind of up and to the right. This is existing. Go to the next slide. This is proposed. So really what you're seeing there is a catio. So a catio is a cat patio. So think of like a screened-in porch for cats. And these are connected to, they're called kitty cities. They're cat rooms, cat adoption rooms on the interior of the building where groups of cats that kind of get along can play. And members of the public can go in and play with the cats, and then the cats can go outside whenever they want and enjoy fresh air and a nice screened-in porch. So this kind of goes along with that idea of the animals on display. They can be seen from Dayton, but also from the bike trail that goes along Dayton that we are proposing to extend through the site. So as you're riding your bike up north on the bike path, you might be able to see those cats playing out there. So. We go and this is base bid is just the catio, and if you go back one, actually the bottom left corner, that's kind of what it would look like, but it would be 5 kind of catios next to each other. And if we go into the next slide, we'll kind of see what the alternate is, and that would be that same catio, but we're going to be adding kind of that billboard concept with a wood look metal louver that would provide some shade and also bounce some light deeper into those spaces. They'll also have maybe some building signage and some playful graphics to kind of dress up the building a little bit. So this would be an ad alternate if base bid comes in under budget.
And I would just note on the exterior a little bit, we tried to be very cost conscious on the exterior design with the new roof, staining of the brick, and some small amenities, really trying to focus the dollars that the city's providing, as well as all of the donations, really to the interior spaces throughout. So that is one of the reasons why the south screen wall right now is being thought of as an ad alternate, because it's some graphics, it's some signage. We'd love to have it, but it does not maybe necessarily rise to the level of kind of the mission of the facility. So that's why we put that a little bit lower down the list.
So this is kind of a cat's eye view rendering of being inside one of those catios, looking south. Lots of natural daylight. This is shown without the kind of louver, but still lots of daylight. Great view for those cats. Next slide. So this is kind of going south down Dayton, approaching the building. You're about to turn into the parking lot. You can see that entry kind of billboard identifying the entrance, the kind of house-shaped motif that we kind of carry out through the building. Go next slide. So this is in the parking lot. This is really the north elevation of the building. You see that entry with some of those playful graphics, the 3 cat bay windows on the left, and then there's 1 dog bay window on the right, and then that addition off to the right with that mechanical screening. This is walking up towards the entry. You go through that portal, or you can go around it even, and then you access the front door into the lobby. So just wanted to touch on some interior concepts. So really, as I said before, this building's split between dog areas on the left and then cat areas on the right, with some exotics on the right as well. So the whole idea of wayfinding is we identify the kind of dog areas with this kind of teal color on the left, with some accent colors on the walls, and then kind of this maroonish, reddish color on the right. And then we've strategically located some like colored silhouette graphics on the walls, as well as some accent wall coloring, some wood look accent wall coloring in the kind of those dash dot areas.
Why is the cat receiving in the dog area?
Can you go back one? So the cat receiving isn't, they have their own receiving area in the cat area. There is an after hours intake area on the top left here, where some cats could be held after hours. But that would only be temporary until they're fully processed the next day. But the dog areas and the cat areas do have their own respective intake areas.
Just seems kind of tempting for dogs to have
Yeah.
a sleeping area right in their space. I don't know.
I agree, but yeah, they are separated. So here are a couple interior renderings. Standing in the lobby, you can kind of see that blue tone on the right, and there's a kind of a dog silhouette on the right as well. We carry that kind of house-shaped motif. Most of the facility, all the dog areas and cat areas have epoxy flooring with cove base, but in the lobby area, we chose to use this kind of this tile floor to kind of dress it up a little bit. As you know, you first enter the building. It does have cove base as well. Yeah, solid surface reception desk with some high, with some durable laminate. The next image is really looking at the cat side on the left. And then the last image of the interior is looking at, this is the cat adoption hallway. They have big windows so you can look in and see those cats in their cat cages. And then you can kind of see that wood look wall covering at the from 4 feet and above on some of those walls. So that's it for the exterior and interior renderings. Brett, I don't know if you wanted to touch on MEP.
Yeah, on some MEP updates, as Sean noted, we were really looking at all of our building systems for the whole building on the roof of the addition. We do have a considerable number of systems up there, 7 different zones, and that's really to manage the different HVAC and mechanical system environments between the dog areas, the cat areas, as well as kind of some of the healthy, as well as some of the intake areas. So 7 different zones, very robust system to really help support animal health overall. This building is being set up and piped and planned to be solar ready. Solar is not being put on this building, but it is being planned and everything put in place. So if and when the city would like to do that, that could be extended and the wires placed. We did look into geothermal. While geothermal is possible, geothermal generally doubled our mechanical costs. So we looked at it very hard, but we really felt the best use of the dollars was to provide the various zones, giving us a really healthy environment while still being budget conscious holistically. So I think we would.
Okay, just touching on schedule. So currently we are in construction documentation phase, and we will be in that phase through June of 2026. We will have a another round of cost estimate done by Stecker Harmson at 75% CDs. And then we're looking at bidding between July and August of 2026, with construction starting in the late summer through spring of 2027.
Just a quick overview of that budget again, so you can see with that design development estimate for construction, which did include some contingency in that estimate outside of our construction contingency. We're under budget right now. These numbers don't include the additional work that Sean showed with the doors going directly out to the yards, but that kind of increase would be offset by additional donations. So we'd still be at that same.
Would you restate what you just said? Say that again. This budget does not include what?
That additional work, the design and construction to add the doors and redo the yard areas that was requested. It was about $178,000.
Plus fees?
Yes, plus that includes the design and the construction.
178. So the point is essentially it's 7.55 is what we're looking at.
Yeah, but it offsets because our great donor base and our fundraising team have already committed that they have the funding to cover that amount. So that's why we had Sean show you that with it in. Again, if you accept the report, we'll move forward with doing a change order to Envision to cover the design costs for that, and then we'll move forward with design of that area. But I'll go back to
just for future reference, I think it would have been helpful to have had another line below there just saying additional work and the cost, because when we go back and look at these sheets, you may think that this is the actual number, but in reality, it's almost 200,000 more. And we're not taking issue with it, just more or less. It's just helpful for having a trail and a track just to kind of follow. That's all on this one sheet. So.
Yep, and we'll definitely show that when we come back, when we're getting ready to bid. We'll have all the numbers laid out for you.
Okay.
I'll go back to kind of the floor plan. So if you have any other questions or
questions.
So 2 more questions. I'm done. So I want to think about health and safety for a second, and you addressed this with the ventilation, but I just want to hear you just confirm. It seems like there's some important health and safety issues in terms of the ventilation, making sure that the staff and volunteers have fresh air to work with here. How do you think about that with this design?
So this building system overall will need to meet specific state and regulatory guidelines from a ventilation and mechanical system. What we're putting in here well exceeds that even. What the state would require at a minimum would be kind of a single overall system. What we're really doing in this overall is separating then the ventilation systems from the people space and the animal spaces, and then further breaking that down into the healthy animals and maybe the intake animal areas. So really breaking this up into multiple different zones, all of which are operating at the required and frankly above industry standards for air changes to really manage safety, odor, all of those different things.
And that's great. And I don't have the vocabulary even how to think about this. I just want to know that this was built in. Final question. I want to ask this on every building that we do. I love the fact that you guys have worked on this design, but I care deeply that our city staff who are going to live with this and have worked with the existing facility have had meaningful opportunities to give input. And so could you just walk us through the ways in which Ron and his team have been involved in the design of this? That's really important.
I will start here. We've been holding meetings every 2 weeks since this building was purchased and we were under contract. Every one of those meetings involved all the team members up at this table, including Ron and his team, as well as team members from the fundraising side of things. We have been through multiple plan iterations as we've gone through layouts and configurations and talking about public-private, intake and safety, and then balancing that all around the budget ultimately so that we can execute on a design here. I would say we've, pushed and pulled on a number of different things as we've tried to meet all the priorities that we're trying to have in with these spaces holistically. I would maybe invite Chief or Ron to even speak.
Weekly meetings.
Yeah, we upgraded weekly.
Not every 2 weeks, every week. We've been meeting for quite some time. So animal control staff has been involved in those. And we should also mention we have another sub-consultant, DLI, who has had a lot of experience in building this exact type of building, who's had a lot of good input for us to consider going forward to make sure that we lay these spaces out in the best way possible. And Ron, if you want to add something.
I think it's going to be a shelter you're going to be very proud of. The city should be proud of it. The residents, volunteers, donors. I think it's going to be an amazing facility. Leaps and bounds better than what we have.
And then my last comment I would say is our team at DLI truly takes kind of an animal mindset when they're looking at this. The level of durability that we need in a facility like this so that 1, 3, 5 years down the road, we don't have damaged walls and other features like that. You're going to walk into this space and see where your dollars, the city's dollars, and the donors' dollars have been spent. But it's ultimately an element that, as we look at this 5, 10 years down the road, it holds up and is a durable facility that takes minimal maintenance.
Great, thank you.
Other questions?
I'm astounded that you can dye that dark brick. I have never seen dark brick like that dyed another color.
Yeah, we've used it on cast in place precast concrete and all sorts of applications.
I think the point being is that you're going. I had the same question, Gloria. You're going over a dark brick to begin with, so and you're basically going to get the brunt of some of another project. Okay. My question is, a similar question is, have you done a test so that we can see what it's going to look like, so we don't get in a situation where that's not what we were expecting and have an issue? So I'm just curious, has that been done? And what the picture shows is you got a clearly defined mortar joint and a brick of a different color. So just so we don't have any surprises. Has that been done?
We have not done it on this facility yet, but we've done this on probably 2 different dozen facilities. And part of the process will be a mock-up occurring on this project from the contractor on what we need to do.
No, I meant pre.
We have not done it pre yet. We definitely can if we would like to, but our experience in using this product and these applications, going from light to dark or even a dark brick to a light, really has not been a concern on that. If anything, we like to do this before the final's put on so we can slightly adjust the tint and the coloration of what's being put on, because the background does have some level of effect. So we have to work through that. But if the council would like us to, we definitely could be doing a mock-up.
I think our past experience says we probably would like that, but
Yeah,
I can't speak for everybody else.
It just seems like usually product manufacturers will donate material and they'll come and put it on to show you how it's going to look, just to make sure everyone's comfortable, so that there's not.
Sure thing. We'll go ahead and do that.
Oh my gosh, you don't like this. It's a pretty bad. It may be hard to change that. So.
Well, and I guess in light of Tim's question about the shading for the dog runs, if there were a trade-off, I would trade the color of the building for the shade on the dog runs, because I sort of feel like the cats are getting privileged here. I feel like it was designed by cat lovers, and the poor dogs don't even have shade when the cats have a catio. I mean,
Square foot per animal, the dogs are ahead.
well, I would love to see shading on the dog runs. I do think that's important, and I like I say, I'd trade the color of the building for the shade on the dog runs any day.
Other questions? Can you just elaborate? Because one of the things that I think we all have seen when we go out to the current shelter is the challenges that they have in terms of keeping it clean, hosing it down. You mentioned durability. Can you just review just in brief what you're doing? I know just from personal experience, the way sometimes people change or save cost is by going to drywall versus going to concrete block or concrete where it should be. So can you talk about that from a standpoint of long-term cleanability?
Sure. So the addition, the dog areas are all going to be concrete block walls. They will all have epoxy floors with cove bases and floor drains. So they'll be, and each space will have a hose, a flush fixture, and a sink. So you can literally just hose the place down. Any of the cat spaces, we'll have epoxy flooring with cove bases, and then water and abuse-resistant gyp up to 4 feet. So those can be cleaned very easily as well. So really, yeah, we're treating all these spaces as really being able to be hosed down.
And I would say just the locations in all of the dog spaces for where we have drains and trench drains and then auto flush that are in those drains themselves are really working to make this be a system that can be operated by a single individual fairly easily. And then also just the addition of, it seems simple, but separate hand wash sinks from waste disposal sinks, and really keeping that separate for sanitation and safety for all the employees.
Yep. Fiberglass doors and door frames in the animal spaces as well, so they won't be prone to rust, things like that. So
when you're first hired or when we talked about this project initially, there was some discussion about new standards that were going to be coming relative to the design of animal shelters. And it was a higher standard, and council was told that your consultant will be working on following those new standards so that when it was done, it'll be compliant with that. Can you talk about how has that been done? Because that was part of the agreement, was that it would be anticipating what's coming down the road. And I think that was attractive to council that had that kind of expertise.
I would need to probably follow up with Corey, then follow up with your team about the exact guidelines that were followed and the exact areas. But I know overall our kennel spaces are set up to be double-sided, which follow some of those guidelines. The size of the rooms themselves and the cat kennels that are in there, and ultimately the size of each one of those kennels have been enlarged from where we currently are, so that it's got the ability to meet all of those more updated standards, especially given the legislation that was just, I think, recently passed here in the last week for the state of Iowa. I would need to come back to you guys with a bulleted list of what those exactly are, but those have been at top of mind when we've thought about the animal spaces, the sizes, and the separation kind of front to back on those. And
yeah, I don't think that I'm not interested. I don't think council is interested in getting a bulleted list. The key is if Ron and his team agrees that not only is it meeting current standards, but as was promised, the standards that were anticipated to be coming at a national level. I can't know what standards they were, and Ron probably knows immediately what I'm talking about, but we only get a chance to do this right once. And I'm not trying to add to the project, but we're also trying to make sure that if there's things that can be done with minor tweaks and comply with and anticipated changes, that those are in place.
Yeah.
So that's the assurance I think that at least I personally have to make sure that we're having that, taken care of. That's why the DLI was brought in. Was it DLI?
It was. Yep.
Yeah, was brought in. Was that's their expertise, right?
Yeah, that's where we've started from the beginning, and as we've looked at the various programs that wanted to be added to this space, those space requirements have not been reduced. If anything, we've just started to look at prioritizing the number of spaces, but the spaces themselves have not been changed outside of those standards. So we're working to follow those.
I would just ask that you would just send some kind of an email to Corey and Chief, just saying, these are the standards they were designed to, and these are the ones that are coming, where they will meet as we understand it, knowing things can change, okay?
Absolutely. We'll do that.
Roof type, what are you putting on for the roof? Just from a standpoint, you're going to put on solar in the future. How are you going to make it watertight?
So right now we are standing seam metal roof, new one for that. For solar, we're looking at clip systems for solar that would go onto those raised standing seam for the sloped roof. The other roof type is a low slope membrane roof where the mechanical is, and obviously that is full of mechanical equipment in that zone.
Actually, we're not doing roof solar anymore because of the structure. Can't really handle it.
Sorry, yes.
We did do
Say that, start over again, please.
Solar would be planned to be on ground to the west. At one point we did look at solar on the building, on the roof, but the roof won't support it. Without extensive structural.
You answered my question, because with a standing seam roof and trying to put solar on top of that and all the penetrations, we're going to have a real challenge keeping it watertight. So ground mounted solar would be what would have to be done.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. I'm going to council probably saying, "Oh my God, he's going in the weeds again." But we heard that air contamination or the smell between dogs and cats can kind of be irritant. And I understand you're putting all your mechanical units, and you said rooftop units, right?
Correct.
So that's that you're using regular conventional rooftop units for heating and cooling then?
Yes.
So our exhaust is going to come out one side, and when they're really close together, what thoughts do you have in terms of that smell wafting over, getting sucked into the adjacent one, and all of a sudden you have cats and dogs going nuts because they smell each other?
I believe I'll have to double check with DLI, but I do know that each unit is rotated. Alternates kind of in the rotation. So the exhaust and intake are on different sides. I'll have to double check on that. Yes, but for the rooms themselves, I know we're dealing with cross contamination of smells inside with negative pressure. So
yeah,
outside. I'll have to double check.
That's your area of expertise, but I'm just thinking that would be very difficult to fix if you all of a sudden have cats and dogs are getting pretty agitated because they're starting to smell it because you don't have adequate clearance, or you're not getting a good job on that. So, all right, that's all the questions I have other questions, but I'm not going to go ahead and go down the path because Amber will basically start saying his fingers on a chalkboard. So anyway, no, thank you for the presentation. Any other questions?
I assume that the standing seam metal roofs are not creating noise that's going to drive the animals crazy. I've never had a metal roof, but I've heard they are sort of pingy.
Yeah, maybe during a hailstorm.
There's always a little bit of a noise that comes with that roof type, but it is a very durable roof type and has a long longevity to it. The combination of having our insulation system below it, and then in our dog animal spaces having a hard lid ceiling, so there's even a further separation. And then in our feline rooms, the ceiling system in there, we start to have some buffer. But if you've ever been in a school that has a metal roof, you do hear it. I mean, there is a noise.
Yeah, there is 8 inches of insulation underneath the metal panels, and then hard lid or acoustic ceiling. Love that. So, because we are dealing with sound transmission between rooms as well with acoustic ceiling.
All right, very good.
Insulation.
I just have a few comments I want to just make, and that is on behalf of council, I want to thank the donors. Corey, you already mentioned it, but man, some anonymous donor kicked off the fundraising campaign with a $3 million lead gift. Unbelievable. Towards a $4.5 million goal. On behalf of council and the City of Ames, whoever you are, thank you very much. And then you got the strategic campaign that followed, raising another $1.5 million. Thank you to everyone who gave, to that, and the hard work, staff and volunteers that and I understand that it was over 1,000 households have given, to this project. So it's a community effort. Susan, Bill, Courtney, Katie, you provided, outstanding marketing materials, social media posts, podcasts. Emily Sargent sitting back there, and Nancy Carroll, thank you for your leadership and all your hard work. You spearheaded, doing this, and I know that you don't want to be called out, but thank you. You guys made this happen. And then all the volunteers that donate countless hours and events through the year. And Ron, thank you to your staff and all. We say that, I think, during budget, that I don't know how you do it, honestly, but I appreciate that you have a heart for it and a passion for it. And we're proud to see you be a virtual no-kill, shelter. And this is long overdue and well-deserved. So what an extraordinary project, unprecedented approach to creating a new facility that's going to really give a new home for our animals and bless over 500 households to adopt these wonderful animals. So with that, to everyone, thank you. I think we need to celebrate this as a community. It's a community project. We're going to be proud of this. And I think probably our grilling of you was because we want to make sure that it looks good and stays good. The most expensive thing after it gets built is staffing. And we don't want to have to be maintaining it or changing things. And so that's where your role is. So with that, anyway, thank you very much for all your efforts. Council, this is basically an update, but I would request that, a motion be made to approve the plan, exterior design concepts and schedule and budget, and then authorize them to proceed with the plans, specifications, and in order to get bids. So we can formalize that and they can go ahead and move on. So
moved. Second.
Thank you.
Do we need to do anything specific to your point about the foundation things that there was?
Yeah, let's pick that up on a separate motion. So yeah. Those paying the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Go ahead. You want to just about
I'm not sure.
preparing foundations for a shade shelter for.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to make this motion, but I would move that those required
underground stuff,
permanent features need to be added so that there was a possibility of adding the coverage. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah. It's in the base bid.
In the base bid, yes.
Okay.
Second.
Those made the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Justin Clausen, Public Works Director, approaches the staff table.
All right. Move on to item 34, hearing on 13th and Grand Power Line Relocation Project.
This is one of Don's projects, but I just want to provide a little.
Wait. Is he sending someone in to do his dirty work or what's going on?
I cannot.
I've never seen Don not come forward.
I'm not done yet. I can't fill those shoes, but I just want to give council a quick update on this. Though it is an electric project, some of the land acquisition and easements are still ongoing for the project. So even though you are considering a project tonight for award, know that we are still working through those land acquisitions and the easements that are required. Public Works will be coming back to council probably sometime later this summer. I'd say in the July timeframe, give you an update on where we're at, standing and all that. But just want to make sure that was clear to council tonight that we're still working through those agreements and whatnot, and we'll be reporting later on that.
This is regarding the 13th and Grand intersection project and properties around that we're
Correct.
talking about. Thank you.
So just to clarify, so are we optimistic that we'll be able to get these without the use of eminent domain?
Yes. So right now we're proceeding down that path. There are 20, I think I'll say this right, 22 separate either partial easements or total acquisitions that we're working on right now. So we have offers out to all of them. They are working through the process right now. They're in the middle of negotiation. We've had some back and forth with some of them. A few of them already signed and ready to go. Others continue negotiations as well. So I don't want to say that we may never be at that point for eminent domain, However, I think we're going to let the process play out before we jump too deep into that. We just want to make sure council is aware of those next steps.
So in regards to 13th and Grand, how many easements are you saying we?
There are 22. So there's two total property acquisitions, and there's 20 additional easements that are required for the 13th and Grand project.
I'm talking about the line relocation.
The line relocation, there are, I believe, I'm counting in my head here, so give me a second. I believe 7 of those impact the line relocation. I think we have 3 signed currently right now, and we're optimistic on the rest of them that we'll get
This is
them.
an important point. We are obligating ourselves to this contract to go ahead and move ahead with it because we have to do this a year ahead of the project itself, which will follow. So we hope we get voluntary agreements, but if not, you may have to be asked to take action.
My only point is that just from a timing perspective, we, as council, I think we've only approved eminent domain twice, my recollection, in the time I've been on council. So it's very rare, but there's time involved in that. And so I just want to make sure that the allocated time would include if we had to use eminent domain, there's time to do that.
Correct. We understand that. And if we need to get to that point, it may be jeopardizing construction in 2027.
That's exactly my concern.
Yes. So we are obviously looking not to have that be the option, but we will report back to you if we need some direction on that.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Com on the project under item number 34? That is the power line relocation project. No. Okay. Declare the public hearing on this project to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this project? Seeing and hearing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. I entertain a motion accepting the report of bids.
Move alternative 1.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Betcher,
Aye.
Junk, aye. Corriere,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Very good. Well, item number 35, revocable lease option with
Brian Phillips and Donald Comm approach the staff table.
Say A and B.
what's that?
He moved alternative.
Alternative 1 includes
But he said A.
alternative 1 picked up both those.
You're good.
Are you ready?
Ready? Yep. Sorry.
What was going on? Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item relates to a lease that we previously discussed at the workshop last month for a solar development on City of Ames property at the Ames Municipal Airport. As you are aware, the timing of this is pretty critical because the solar developer would intend to apply for federal tax credits and would need to perform certain work in advance of those tax credits expiring on July 3rd. The initial goal was for us to negotiate a revocable lease agreement, an option agreement, and have it presented for the council to consider tonight. However, we've made great progress. We've gone back and forth a couple of times with the developer. We have a few items remaining to hammer out. And so the developer has indicated that if we were to delay this to the next council or to 1 week from today for approval, they believe that would be about the latest that they could receive this option agreement and still proceed with all the work that they need to complete prior to the expiration of the safe harbor provisions for the federal tax credits. So we are, again, we've gone back and forth even today with some information, and we're finalizing the areas that are subject to the lease. We believe that we're optimistic that we can get this accomplished within the next couple of days and be able to present the option agreement to you. So the request tonight is to continue the hearing on this item to May 19th, and for us to have a special meeting on that day.
What time is there going to be?
I don't know if we've.
I think we're proposing 3:30 because of people's schedules. So it's going to be a Zoom meeting. You know. Can you, do you have a map showing where they're proposing, or a plan showing where they're proposing? And also, Council, I asked Brian if he could find or show, we adopted a master plan or accepted a master plan for the overall airport, and just wondering how those would overlay.
Didn't we talk about that last time?
I was not here last time.
Oh, that's right.
It was just for my sister's funeral.
I see.
Okay, so all right, so to cut to the chase, what was talked about last time? So I make sure, because you don't want to necessarily revisit the whole
Well,
thing
it'll
again.
be faster.
So just briefly, I can walk you through the airport. This is an excerpt from the airport master plan. The master plan identifies portions of the airport that are intended for long-term use as either non-aeronautical activities, which are indicated in the orange, especially on the west and north side of the airport. It also indicates the presence of future parking and maneuvering and hangar space, indicated in red and yellow. The green is the detention basins around the airport. In the discussions with the solar developer, about half of the solar is intended to be in areas that are on the east side of the airport or in the north on the approach, in places where currently that land is farmed and there's really not a viable an ability to construct vertical improvements on those portions of the airport. That property right now is farmed. We would replace the farm lease with with the solar, and then a portion of the costs related to purchasing the power would go to reimburse the airport for the lost farm rent. The developer has indicated about around half of the solar, the 24.9 megawatts of planned solar, would be on the east side of the airport or in, I believe, this portion down here on the southwest portion of the runway, the main runway. The rest of the project, if the council was agreeable, would be placed in areas that are shown in the master plan as as future airport development. Right now, a large part of the west portion of the airport, so this area up in here, is leased to John Deere. There's about a 54-acre portion that's leased to John Deere. It's undeveloped ground. John Deere uses it for testing sprayers. They spray water on those acres. And then, of course, we've got the Sigler building. And there's to the west of the Sigler building is another 10-acre parcel that is platted that would be for future non-aeronautical use. So that's how the site lays out. What's important to mention is the way that we're approaching this lease option. If the council has the ultimate control through this project of over whether you're satisfied with the locations that the solar is installed, the terms and conditions of taking the solar, the pricing. If any of that is unsatisfactory to the council's under no obligation to enter into a purchase power agreement that would be subsequent to the option. So the city has no risk from a standpoint of the outlay of the initial cash that's necessary. The developer has an obligation to put down some money in order to make the investments to meet the safe harbor provisions for federal tax law. But the city is not at risk for any of that. We would need to go through the process over the next year or so with the developer to sort out what areas may they actually put solar panels on that we are satisfied with, what's acceptable to us and not, and does the pricing meet our satisfaction as well. And if all of those things do not line up in a way that satisfies the city council, we're under no obligation to proceed with a power purchase agreement.
So what was discussed regarding the areas that have been master planned? Did you have any? Sorry, I haven't had a chance to watch the.
I mean, I think it was that there was still enough property left, right, that it was worth their while to look at, was the conclusion they came to, right?
I wasn't at that meeting either. I apologize.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. But that was, I mean, that was my takeaway, I guess. Don, is that right?
Yes, yes, that was the intent. Yes.
Yeah, that there's enough land that wasn't earmarked for future development that it would still be worth their while to look at.
My question, thank you, that's helpful. And the question becomes, is council supportive of communicating that the areas that have a master plan right now for future development are not to be included in their pro formas and thinking about it, but the other areas in the southeast corner and up the east side and across the street are more amenable from a standpoint, because if they're going through and doing their calculations and they say, well, if all of it's shown as being a potential, and all of a sudden we say, well, no, we don't want to do that.
And I think Steve tried to make clear that the priority is the airport and that this is secondary.
Yeah.
And so just making sure that we are thinking about how do we protect areas that we know we're going to need in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
I think that was clear to the representative from the company who was here
right.
for the meeting.
Yeah. So we try.
No, I apologize. I've not had a chance to read or watch the
Not a problem.
when that workshop occurred. So, and just thinking in the effort of being clear on communication, if council wants to make sure that they understand that area is not included, I don't know if any of these are going to be eliminated or not.
I think I trust staff not to sell out the parts of the airport that we're going to need to use. So, I mean, I think that's part of looking at this is.
Well,
Did
council
anything
makes the decision.
change from the last meeting with regard to these addresses?
No, I think we just want to make sure that both parties.
Well,
Like times
let me make a couple things clear. So on the agenda is a list of addresses. That list of addresses is every address that contains some airport property, because we are not yet certain until we finalize the areas in the lease exactly where there would be future solar development potential. So the addresses contain some parcels that may not have any solar at all on them, but for the purpose of being comprehensive, we needed to notice them here in the hearing. Now, the developer right now is firming up what 165 acre portion or combinations of portions of property that we have discussed would ultimately form the legal description of the lease. And that's different than the description that was used for the purpose of the notice on the agenda.
I think I probably misstated it. What I'm intending is when we discussed this at the last meeting, we made very clear which of the parcels were designated for future development in the airport master plan. And they were not included in the parcels that the developer seemed to agree would be developed, but that the specifics of where those panels would go was not decided. It's just that they were within the blue blobs, right, as opposed to other areas that we said were off limits. Is that
That's my understanding. Yeah.
And within the blue blobs were these.
Well, and we still haven't agreed to anything. I mean, you know, we're still sort of in information gathering, right? You know, so.
We only have 3 more days to put this
Okay.
together. It's
Yeah.
a lot of pressure. You know.
But then, yeah, we have the right at any time to say, yeah, they can't go there.
My only thought was that if council said absolutely not in that area, then Brian can communicate with this plan, they're not going to support anything in those areas essentially. And then he can communicate that whether or not it has the address or not. But if you want to say, we'll just go ahead and.
Well, I think it's a good idea to have that motion.
Yeah, that would certainly make things clearer.
We'll have that as backing from the council then.
Yeah, I mean, you're still saying you're open to a project, and you know, a lot of the area is still going to be
You're just
available.
passing an emotion, which you said before you wanted to do anyway. We're recommending. So I think it'd help us in negotiations or discussions.
Or just keeping it clear with him, this is what don't come back with this saying, oh, this project is not going to go.
Right.
Because we don't have it here and here and here. And then all of a sudden you got, oh, well, shoot, we want it to go, but we don't want to
That's
have.
right. I think it's a good idea.
It's just more or less.
So that was not part of the assumption based on the last meeting?
Was there a motion? I don't know.
I don't remember whether we had a motion.
I don't know that we had a motion. I guess I
Yeah, 'cause
thought
that was
staff were talking about that as an assumption, but I guess
Mhm.
perhaps I was wrong about that. We could move that council has a strong preference not to develop.
No solar in the areas that are
Yeah.
identified as reserved for.
I would move that we communicate a strong preference not to put solar in places that were earmarked for future airport development.
Future development. Just say development. Some are airport related hangars, others to have business buildings built there, you know, other kind of.
But all like aeronautical.
They don't have
or
to be aeronautical.
Just airport related.
Just doesn't have to be.
Why would we let a non-airport related building go there?
That adds to the revenue. If you have Sigler sitting there right now.
Oh, I see.
They're leasing the land. That generates revenue for the operation of the airport, which allows us not to have to subsidize with general fund or property tax money. So it's a revenue maker for us. There's also airport related. Those would be hangars and other type of things that are related to the operation itself. But it's good to have that revenue stream on the area that we project.
I mean, I guess, again, I believe there to be revenue potential in coexistence with solar panels, right? That is a thing too.
They're going to expect a lot less in rent from that because
It's not.
they're just going to pay
using any-
what you lost in farm rental. It's a lot less than you get when you put a building there.
Well, and by they, we mean we,
Yeah,
right?
Right.
The
So
more you charge them,
electric is going to pay
Right.
to make the airport whole for the property that formerly the airport made revenue from by farming,
Right.
right? So the more you demand from electric for rent, the higher the price of the project.
Okay, there's a motion made and seconded. Everyone understand the motion?
We
I'll
read
second.
it one more time too, just so we have it.
Yes, I had that it was requested to communicate to the developer that the city council has a strong preference that no solar be installed in the areas that were earmarked for future development
on the airport master plan.
on the airport master plan.
Yeah, on the airport master plan.
Yep. All right.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we're going to declare the public hearing on this item to be open. It will be, and if anyone here wants to address council, you can do it now. Given the fact that we're going to have a Zoom hearing, it can be continued. But is anyone, please go ahead. Thank you for waiting. You just introduce yourself and then you may start.
Caitlin Leon, Ames resident, also part of the Ames Climate Action Team. I was sitting here and I'm like, man, do I really care about the climate that much to be here this late on a weeknight? But then I was like, nope, I do. And that's why I'm here and that's why I stayed. So I appreciate you guys for also being here this late as well. ACAT finds this to be a very important endeavor as we try to align with the Ames Climate Action Plan and getting more solar and a more varied electric generation power here in Ames. So we do support the city manager's recommendation to move forward with the revocable lease to look at a prospective solar array on the municipal airport property. Solar is a reliable form of energy. It kind of locks in the rates. It's not going to swing with the economic market the way that we see with fossil fuels. And so that's going to have immense positive impacts for residents here in Ames down the road and in the future. Solar is another way to increase our community's climate resiliency in that it will provide reliable, decentralized power during extreme weather, especially like peak summer season when things are very hot. We're going to have a very reliable source of energy that's actually going to do really well in that kind of an environment. And then it also reduces our reliance on the MISO market and other fossil fuel sources for electricity, which again aligns with our cap, aligns with the City of Ames's initiative to be forward thinking. We need to move forward on expanding solar energy now. The cap actually had in there that we should have expanded by, I think, 50 megawatts, either through wind and solar, a combination of the two, by 2025. And we are past that deadline at this point. So we're not on track or on target to keep up to speed with our cap, which is concerning. And so even though this is half of that, it's 24.9, it's still going to help us get a little bit closer to some of those deadlines that we have at like 2030 and 2050 with the cap. So I know the vote isn't until next week. I wish we could vote on it tonight to get it going, because as we know, there is a deadline that's involved with this project with the developers and needing to get it done by the safe harbor deadline in July. And so I know that you guys are going to be very busy the next week or so as this gets rolled out. But ACAT is very excited about it, and we do support the recommendation to move forward with allowing the developers to have this revocable lease so that they can look at this project a little bit closer. Thank you all for all of your work that you've put into this. I know it's a very busy time of year for you guys, and we do appreciate it. Again, it aligns with our cap. It aligns with our community vision. It's a no-brainer for us. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, you're welcome to be on Zoom, but you don't need to make the same comments all over again. I think everyone heard what you had to say and appreciate it very much. So,
okay, was that at 3:30 next Monday?
Actually check on the website, because I know it's being verified with council members. Several of them are traveling to a conference, and so we're trying to fit in so we can all be on Zoom. I think it's right now it's tentatively 3:30, but make sure you check on the website to verify,
Okay.
or you can call city clerk and she can verify it for you also.
Okay, sounds
Help
good. Thank
find
you.
the link too if you want.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, I entertain a motion to continue the hearing to May 19th.
So moved.
Second.
All right, roll call.
Junk. Aye. Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Speedy Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
All right.
Thank
you. Item number 36. Don, you gonna give us?
I guess I'm the only one left to talk about this one. So, this next hearing, basically, if you're familiar with the Prarieview Industrial Center, a substation is under construction there by a company called ITC to basically future serve load in that area. They want to bring in multiple transmission lines into that substation to support it. So early on in the project, they reached out to Ames, since our 161 kV line that goes from Ames plant to Ankeny goes by that. So we've been working with ITC on several agreements that would allow us to not only support the project, but then also give us some ownership rights. We had set up the hearing tonight to look at those agreements. There are a couple of I's to dot and some T's to cross that we do want to go through. So we're not bringing those final agreements to you tonight. We also need to work with Alliant, who is the off-taker out of that substation, and we want to make sure that some of those documents are in line too. So we're asking actually tonight to leave the hearing open and continue it to the next council meeting, which will be 2 weeks from today.
Questions?
So you mentioned these were just I's to dot and T's to cross, but are there any substantive issues that are still at play here? I mean, this is a big piece to put in place. It's not a small matter. And so to what degree should the council be working through this, or is this just a matter of rubber stamping? And I guess that's what I'm trying to understand.
I'd never say rubber stamp, but so for example, the substation itself, it happens to be owned by Alliant. We're tying our equipment onto equipment that's owned by ITC. So we want to make sure that we have access rights and stuff like that from Alliant, even though Alliant is not party to these agreements. So it's more of a clear understanding, a letter agreement with Alliant, for example, that says we can go in and access our equipment within the substation. So I don't see any major things that are going to disrupt that. We're very, very close, but we don't have all. If you want to get into the technicality, there's a remote terminal unit that has to be housed in some Alliant equipment.
Well, let me say this. I'm not sure I want to get into details, but let me ask at a higher level. So from my perspective, I just want to know that what is being proposed is consistent with the long-term development of this property. So anything you're about to say is probably above my head. So keep me at the high level.
Yes. So to be involved in this program or in this project, there are benefits to the city, and we have those all outlined in these agreements. There's also benefits to ITC. All of those things have been agreed to. I do want to talk to the city manager on a couple of the finer points, but we believe that, for example, under certain outage conditions, I want to make sure, absolutely sure, that the understanding is that the city is still protected and that we have use of our lines to serve our customers, which is just a prudent task to do as we're sharing our resources with ITC. And likewise, they're sharing their resources with us to back us up during emergencies. So
that was your question about how the land is going to be used.
Yep. So
okay, that land, they're going to build a substation anyway, correct?
Yes.
They're building a substation. We're trying to take advantage of that. We will invest money into it. So we'll have, if you think about it, another source of energy, a pathway for energy to be brought in. So we'll benefit from that too. So we'll participate in that. If we walk away from it, they're still going to build that substation on that land out in Prarieview. Does that help you? You're talking about the land itself?
It does. So you've got sort of the construction. Does this station make sense? I can't even wrap my brain around like what this potentially could be. And so I want to make sure that someone is thinking about how does this fit into the overall piece. But to your point, Steve, if they're going to build it anyway, that's sort of a
they're building it so they can have enough capacity to service all the buildings when they eventually start building out there, right?
And so
they need that substation.
This is really just on the operational side, agreement on the operational.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful.
Not a partner. We're going to invest in that.
I mean, we're going to own equipment in that substation for the betterment of the city. Yes.
They're going to build it no matter what. We're going to try to take advantage of it.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, I declare the public hearing on this item to be open, and I want to address council on this. I declare I asked the council, would you entertain a motion to continue the hearing to May 26th?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Corriere,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Junk. Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. All right, moving on to item 37, entertain a motion on the second reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 28, Municipal Code, Section 28201 to increase water rates by 3.
Move on second.
Second.
I didn't finish reading.
And to increase sanitary sewer.
All right, roll call.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Junk. Aye. Corriere.
Aye.
All right. We have quite a few dispositions and communications tonight.
We do.
Yeah.
17.
17.
All right. Is there any interest to do anything with item number 1, email from Kyle Portman regarding South Campus redirection area or other parking issues?
Can we?
Or is there anything
interest in doing that, or just saying a thank you for the information?
I would move we thank him for the information.
Second.
All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Secondly, council, I've been getting emails from Lynn Ballard. You voted last year to not allow anything more than 72-hour parking on their property. And I am just asking for you to either affirm that decision and say, yep, nothing's changed, or if you want to put on, reconsider his request. He wants to have RVs be able to be parking on the Haunted Forest property for the entire football season, essentially. And it was a 6-0 vote, and Renee sent out information to you guys with the history of that, the information. So I'm just looking for your decision so I can communicate to him one way or the other.
I would move that we let him know that we are not interested in reconsidering our position.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Did you get that email, Amber?
Yeah, I was just looking at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. All right. The number 3 was from Brian Lawson, postmaster. That was actually, like Raman, you brought that up during the conversation regarding 608 Burnett. Number 4, Yonghan, housing, resilience, materials. Is there any interest in getting a memo or just saying thank you for your email?
I would move that we thank him for, thank the resident for their suggestion.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Next is a letter from Curtis Bauer, Mayor of Roland, wanting to be released from 28E agreement for solid waste services. And also you received a letter from the city of Maxwell here recently also.
I would move we direct staff to prepare these and place it on a future agenda
For what?
to release them from their
To release them from the 28E.
Oh, we have to do some form. Okay.
Is it possible to expand the motion to include any other requests that we receive that are related to this same issue?
Just to come before council.
Yeah.
That's a good way of streamlining it.
Sure, yeah. I'd amend my motion in that way.
So you want to read that back?
I could rephrase it.
No. I think she's probably, I mean, she's pretty good.
So I have to direct staff to prepare and place on a future agenda the release of the 28E agreement for the city of Maxwell to be amended to include all other requests received on the topic.
Yep.
Dang, she's good.
Okay.
Everyone agree?
It was Roland
Yes.
too, not Max.
Oh, yeah. Hey, thank you.
We already did Maxwell.
Yeah.
Roland is
Roland and McCallsburg was the new one we got.
Yeah.
Carlsberg. Okay.
Since
So that's why your bucket is good. Anything else that comes in. All right. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Next is an email from Stacy Woodward regarding Airbnb VRBO guidelines. Is there interest for a memo from staff? Is there interest in just thanking her for her email?
I don't know if Steve, you want to talk about what the chief shared with us about there was enforcement on
Yeah,
this.
we actually cited them for a nuisance party violation at a large party at this Airbnb. So I think Stacy, I haven't talked to her, but maybe he's looking for guidelines or restrictions you put into Airbnbs. I'm not sure we can do that. Mark will have to deal with that. We usually would handle that just like any other kind of complaint. It could be in a single family home, a rental property, or an Airbnb. Those would be trash, the things that would affect neighborhoods, trash, noise, nuisance parties. Now, whether we have the tools that will eliminate that behavior, I'm not sure, because we cite them in what's the first violation, Mark? It's $100. Is it 100? I think it is.
I think that's right.
I think it's $100. So we cited the occupants of the Airbnb for that.
But we can write to her and say that she can continue to report nuisance violations to either police or
Yep.
inspections, depending on.
Yeah. I would move that we do that.
Yeah.
And mention also in our response that Airbnbs would be held to the same standards as rental properties, as they do have to receive a rental permit to be an Airbnb.
Not all of them do, but I never mind. I'm not going
It depends on the length of days it's being,
I don't want to get into that right now.
Yeah.
All right. so-
Second.
All right. So it's to write to Stacy and ask her to continue to let staff know what. Sorry, I'm doing your job. What did you?
Move to write to her and let her know that she continue to report violations to police and inspections as appropriate, and mention that Airbnbs would be held to the same standards as rental properties.
Okay. All right. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. All right. Number 7. Is there interest in the memo?
Yeah, I would move that we get a memo from staff on item 7 and 9 at
Okay.
the same time.
All right. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Number 8.
Oh, yeah. Also thank him for his feedback on that one.
Second.
They had some active construction going there. So I think
Okay. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. You have, is there anything that council's interested in doing with items 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 from city attorney?
oh, I had one, but
Accept.
Okay.
Accept.
Number 15 from Justin is just an update. 16, everyone in agreement, understand the reason for not pursuing after a grant.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then 17, is there interest in a memo or just thank you very much? Or if you put, or place on a future agenda, or no action on the gas station text amendment?
No, go ahead.
I was going to move that we put it on a future agenda. to
Yeah, I'll
discuss
second.
it.
Okay, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. All right. Report of governing bodies, anything from Discover Ames?
Nothing.
Ames Regional Economic Alliance?
Since our last meeting.
what was our last meeting? Oh, it was the one up in
That's right.
Story City.
We went to the Story City Library and we
Yeah.
heard about mental health issues
And corn.
and corn. Yeah.
Okay. No report from Story County Emergency Management Agency. They won't meet for another month or two. Transit.
We haven't had a meeting since last time.
Okay. Council comments. Trey, you get to start tonight. First meeting, you got almost 3.5 hours in.
Yeah. Just thank you guys for having me and everything. Look forward to meeting everyone, getting to know everyone, and yeah, just looking forward to the summer. I'll hopefully try to make it here in person, but I might be on Zoom sometimes. So yeah.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I share with Trey that he and I can chat more about, when it'd be appropriate to come down. We're not expecting from Sioux City area and down here. It's a long haul for a meeting, but so Tim.
So I want to commend staff. Saturday was a big day. We had the mayor and council's bike ride. I think 100 people, was the number.
Wonderful.
So great turnout. It was a great route, a lot of engagement with community. And then afterwards, we were out at the Ontario Park. I was just going to go there for a minute. I was there for 2.5 or 3 hours. It was so much fun. And I think there were over 200 people that came out to walk the grounds for the first time. There's a tremendous amount of interest. And so the process, just for people who are watching, if there are people who are watching, the process is really just beginning. And so lots of opportunities to give input. We have a process to follow. And so we're going to make sure we have robust community engagement, but just really appreciate the staff organizing. It was beyond expectations on Saturday. Very cool.
Yep.
Thanks.
Brown.
I thought it might be helpful so that we had a public forum comment about providing more transportation options in the late night hours to bar denizens, basically, of all ages, students and otherwise too, I think. And so I thought that might be helpful feedback for someone to take to SciRide, one of you SciRide Transit Board folk, just because the Midnight Express is what they're talking about, I think, in terms of a city provided service. And that for us is only 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. So maybe the comment for the transit board would just be that you had a citizen who requested we consider extending Midnight Express hours. So I just think that would be good to pass on to transit. And then I would ask, maybe I could move that we reach out and thank Mr. Gray for coming and for his input and tell him we'll pass it on to the transit board.
To Cameron.
Yeah. So I would move that we respond. We have his contact information somewhere.
Probably.
You do? Good.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
I'll second. Do we need to?
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
That's all. Thanks.
Nothing tonight. Thanks.
Nothing for me.
Nothing tonight.
Laura?
Two things. The first is that there was a recycling information session at 60 Forward on Monday, and I arrived as it was finishing, and I believe I heard that there were around 75 people, maybe, Brian?
Okay.
Who showed up for that. So great opportunity, and there were actually people who showed up after it was over looking for it. So I hope that we will continue to have those opportunities. I understand that we will. The second thing is something that I am going to look into and then bring forward to council, but I thought I would give you a heads up. A number of years ago, we discussed whether we, in creating the fines for nuisance parties and other nuisance behaviors, whether we could charge the owners of those nuisance properties for the city services that were used to enforce our ordinances that they broke. And I want to look into that a little bit more to be able to direct staff on the model that I believe it was Corvallis, Oregon used. But I think it's time to bring that back again in light of the fact that we are not able to levy at the levels that we might need to for services like police and fire. And maybe it's time to see if people will pay for those services that they suck up with nuisance parties.
City Attorney Mark Lambert approaches the staff table.
That's it.
Okay. All right. Mark, does council have justification to go into closed session?
Yes, Mayor, the council does. Iowa Code Section 21.51C allows the council to go into closed session to discuss matters that are in litigation or where litigation is imminent.
Title card, closed session Ames City Council.
You don't need roll call to get out. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
And I have a conflict on this,
Where?
so I won't be able to vote. My firm has
Were you
represented her,
on TV when he was doing this?
not on this particular matter.
Okay, well,
How did
I
we?
don't understand. What are we waiting for?
Can I make the motion?
yes.
Yeah.
I would move that we approve the settlement with Janet Driesman for $100,000.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Garten,
Abstain, conflict of interest.
Betcher,
Aye.
Junk. Aye. Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
All right, very good. Entertain motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Ames City Council meeting credits.